should be live. We'll give it just a second to make sure. Yep. And hope everybody is well today. I have my cow cup. Yep. So you know what that means. It means that it is Sunday morning. And I just realized the sound is on, so let me mute that bad boy. We don't need that. So I hope everybody is well today. I wanted to talk for a minute before we get into the chat about judgment. A lot of people, they get worked up as far as with Christianity about the concept of judgment. Not just the fact that Christians are judgmental. That is a separate issue that I've talked about at length, and I will probably continue to talk about till the day I die. But I'm talking about the idea of judgment by God himself, that after you die, you face down with God. And let's say, hypothetically, that there is something in your life, some practice, some belief that is a core thing to you, something extremely important, a very, very core important part of what you are. And hey, Alex, how you doing? And the reason I say that is because, of course, where this tends to unfold for a lot of people is in their marital life. For example, people who live together before they get married, sometimes for years. And by the way, most Christians do this, not just non-Christians. This also can, when we talk about various sexual practices, you get into homosexuality and stuff like that. That becomes an issue when we start talking about these things, because these are things that definitely go against what the Bible says. And yet, it's a core part of who these people are, and so it's very easy to say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't seem very fair. That doesn't seem like. Oh, I mean, come on, this is who I am. This is what I am, and you're saying that I'm going to hell because of who I am, because of what my core being is. And so what happens and is that people push away from Christianity. Either they just give up on Christianity, or they try to find a flavor, if you will, of Christianity that is more accepting, which is, by the way, a growing movement in Christianity, is to create something called progressive Christianity, where people take some interesting creative license with the Bible to try to basically make it so that certain practices that we've always said were not okay, to make them okay. So, for example, one mental gymnastic that is been a common attempt to try and justify certain sexual sins is to say that in the Bible, whenever it says homosexuality, it really said pedophilia, and that it was just misinterpreted. And so therefore, homosexuality is never even mentioned in the Bible, right? And so that's, I mean, it's clearly not the case, because it's not like these are confusing words to translate. There's a big difference between translating "you shall not lay with a child," like you lay with a man, or like you lay with a woman, versus "you shall not lay with a man." But there's this. That's one thing that people try to do. They try to change the interpretation of the Bible. They try to say that, well, those aren't, those verses, they don't really count. That that grace covers every sin, and therefore you have a license to sin. Which, by the way, the funny thing about that is that that's actually addressed directly in the Bible by Paul himself. Many of the things that people are saying to this day, there's commentary in the Bible, not commentary like written by commentators of the Bible, a commentary written by the actual authors of the Bible. Most prominently, Paul himself, who says things like, so does that mean that we should sin even more so that we can say, let the grace of God abound? Absolutely not. So but here's the interesting thing about this, and this is something that Corey, our senior pastor at the church, was talking about last night, and got me thinking, is that people don't actually understand the way that the godly judgment works. And so they assume, and this is where the big problem is, they assume that the common statement is, why would I go to hell just because of sin X? Whatever sin X is, it doesn't matter. We don't need to focus in on homosexuality. It could be literally anything. And so why would I go to hell just because I had sex before marriage? Why would I go to hell just because I, whatever it is, right? And so people then try to say how unfair that is. Okay, you're right. That does seem kind of unfair, and one of the things that many atheists have argued over the years, and I've been in conversations with atheists on this, and atheists still to this day use this argument, which is that hell is a purely unjust form of punishment because it is an eternal punishment for a temporal crime. Because even if you were a mass murderer, if you were the worst person ever, if you were that certain person from 1940s Germany that was responsible for the death of millions of people, there's still a limit to how much punishment that one person should endure for their crimes, right? Maybe it would be 100 years of punishment, 1,000 years of punishment, 1,000,000 years of punishment, but not an eternity of punishment. And so that's one of the common arguments about this, is that, well, it seems patently unfair that if you're to give somebody an eternal punishment for a temporal crime, because the crime should always fit the punishment, or the punishment should always fit the crime, I should say. And hey, Aberjam, look, buddy, got the coffee cup, got the cow cup today. I'm getting extra salty when I'm drinking from the cow. So, but then people, the problem is that people are completely missing the boat on, and Alex, it's kind of funny because you threw that, the thing about, I don't recall that particular Robot Chicken sketch, but the interesting thing about where I'm going with this is that one of the big things that people miss is there are two judgments in the Bible. The first, and the one that people confuse with the second, is the one that determines whether you go to heaven or hell. And by the way, what hell is a matter of debate. And I don't care what anybody says. And Abraham, I know I love you, man. You know I love you. Abraham is a very opinionated Christian, and I love Abraham to death. He always says, nope, this is what it is. But I will tell you that scholars, and I'm not saying scholars just meaning smart people, I mean the actual biblical scholarship, the people who are PhDs in biblical scholarship, the people that are the true experts, do not agree on this. And so it is not a 100% determined thing. As far as exactly what hell is, we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But the determination of what sends you to heaven and hell is not who you slept with. It's not whether or not you cheated on your taxes. It's not any of the bad things that you did. It's that's the ironic thing, is that people think that all these bad things that, they think it's like the Good Place, or any of, there's a million other movies and TV shows and other popular culture that have this idea of like there's a point system, that somehow you have to score a certain score to get into heaven, and if you don't hit that score, you go to hell. And that's not at all what it says. To get it, and that's actually kind of what they're doing, is they're going by the Old Testament standard. And that's why in the Old Testament, you had the sacrificial system. You had to do that in order to push off your sin, because if you didn't, then you were in trouble, right? And because the sin does condemn you, but you have to get, you have to push it away to avoid being judged for it. And so you do these sacrifices to avoid the judgment of the sin for each year. Well, then Jesus comes along, or Yeshua, if you prefer the proper pronunciation. And Jesus comes in and performs the ultimate sacrifice. And when Jesus, and by the way, guys, and I will answer your questions to me, just make sure you put Salty Trekker in the chat. But let me finish my pontification first. But I will go through the chat. Anything that has @SaltyTrekker in it, I will read after I'm done with the pontification portion of today's live stream. Anyway, Jesus comes along, does the ultimate sacrifice, and dies for all of our sins. So that way we don't have to do continual sacrifice to avoid sin judgment. So the fact that you slept with your wife before you got married, Jesus' sacrifice covered that sin. The fact that you cheated on your taxes in 1987, Jesus' sacrifice covered that sin. The fact that you looked at that porn movie 2 weeks ago, Jesus' sacrifice covered that sin. All right. All of that. So the sin portion, as far as the judgment of going to heaven and hell, is covered. We got that. All right, so we'll put that aside for a minute. Don't worry, it ain't gone forever. We're going to talk about the sin in a minute, but it's at least for the heaven hell judgment. All right, we're gonna put that over here for just a minute. We got this lump of sin. We're gonna put it over here. All right, so because basically here's what happens: we got this dump truck full of sin that would condemn literally anyone, because every single person sins on pretty much a daily basis, right? I don't know if it's even possible to go through a day without committing some kind of mind. And this is where Jesus wanted to make it clear about what is sin and why it's impossible not to sin. When he talks about lust, for example, and he says, look, it was written that you will not commit adultery. Now, so everybody knows, adultery is to have sex with another person's wife, or another person's spouse, more accurately, because a woman can commit adultery by having sex with another person's husband. And so, that is, of course, a sin, right? And so what the Jews would do, the Jews were a very legalistic nation, and so they would say, okay, so we're not allowed to commit adultery. So that means that we cannot have sex with the spouse of someone who is married, but we can have sex with hookers all day long. And so they did. They thought, oh, no problem, we'll just do the hookers. That's not adultery as long as the hookers aren't married. It's not adultery. And technically speaking, they were being accurate. And so that's why hookers, it was kind of fun. And so people don't understand. Like people say, well, you know, when there's the story of Jesus interfering with the woman who committed adultery, and they say, well, where's the man, right? That's everybody, especially in the modern woke culture, everybody's like, what happened to the dude? Why didn't Jesus say anything? Where is the dude that committed adultery? The dude didn't commit adultery. Because she's probably a hooker. So that's, you know, the idea there is that, but the Jews were extremely, they took the letter of the law. So what Jesus says is, look, you know that you can't have sex with another person's spouse. That's adultery. So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you so much as look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. Bam. That's the new standard. And it's like, what? Well, how am I supposed? But she's hot, and I just looked at her, and yep, you just committed adultery. And then Jesus takes it another step. All right. He says, you know, you've heard it said, thou shalt not commit murder, which, by the way, the commandment is not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not commit murder. There's a big difference between the two, and people can't wrap their head around it. Thou shalt not kill will be a complete prohibition against killing. However, murder is a specific form of killing. Right. And there's a reason for that. And that's because, like, it's not forbidden in the Bible to be, say, a police officer who kills in the line of duty or a soldier who kills in war, stuff like that. That's not a sin. However, it is a sin to, you know, commit murder or to kill for personal gain or that kind of thing. But anyway, so Jesus said, so you've heard it said that you shall not commit murder. Well, guess what? If you so much as hate on your brother, you've committed murder in your heart, right? If you say raka, which is, you know, and he goes on, he basically talks about how you need to get hate, you know, you need to get hate out of your heart, right? Hatred is as bad as murder. So all of those people out there that are hating on Kathleen Kennedy right now, or Alex Kurtzman, or whoever the flavor of the month is, that's murder from a biblical standpoint. That is absolutely murder, well, from a Christian standpoint. Now, if you're not a Christian, okay, hate all you want. I'm not saying, if you're a non-Christian, it is perfectly acceptable in modern society to sit there and hate on people. That's if unless, of course, you're hating on a person who is a protected class of person. But if you are in fact going to call yourself a Christian, and you go out and hate on people, you are in fact committing murder. In the eyes of God, you are committing murder. And so you need to you need to pull it back and check yourself and realize that, whoa, I need to stop that, right? So all the sin piles up in our life. We can't avoid it. We absolutely can't, because this is stuff that all of us do at some point, right? I've done it, right? I'm so guilty of it. I feel horrible about it. When I started this channel, I poured so much hate out for Ryan Johnson, and I've repented of that, meaning that I have publicly apologized for it. I've taken those videos down, and I will not do it anymore. I have, that's what repentance is. You stop it, you apologize, and you turn away from it. I am not going to hate on Ryan Johnson anymore. I will tell you, hate The Last Jedi to the day I die, but I will not hate on Ryan Johnson anymore, and hating The Last Jedi, I will take, and you know what, Jesus, you're going to have to forgive me on this one, but I will take the clause where it says, the principalities and powers clause, for hating The Last Jedi. That's how I'm going to take it. And for my Christian brothers and sisters that get that, I'm sure you got a little chuckle out of that. But The Last Jedi is not a person. And so I don't think there's a problem there hating on that. Anyway, so we create this dump truck pile of sin in our lives that rightfully should condemn us. 10,000 cases of murder, 10,000 cases of adultery, and who knows how many other, millions of cases of blasphemy, just all this crap that we've done throughout our lifetimes that absolutely should condemn us. However, standing next to the dump truck is Jesus. And Jesus is like, guess what? You don't got to worry about it. I died to cover all of that. All you got to do is accept that. Did you accept that? Are you following me? The answer is yes. You're in. And that's it. That is the, because, and the joke earlier about Robot Chicken saying heaven has really low standards. It does. Really low standards. All you got to do is follow Jesus. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. And the problem there is that a lot of people think that, so all I got to do is say, hey, Jesus, okay, thank you. I accept your gift, and therefore I'm in, right? Well, there's more to it than just saying I accept, because once you accept, that means that you are now committed to following him. And that's not the easy. Now, it can be summed up in two basic statements. And Jesus himself says this. And that is to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Do those two things. That's not easy. It's simple, but it ain't easy. But yeah, and then you got to figure out, well, what does Jesus want me to do? Well, guess what? He's got an instruction book. So you start studying it. You start connecting to a church which that follows the actual teachings of Jesus. And that's what we're going to get into in just a moment when we get to the second judgment and stuff. So you accept, you're in. You reject, you're not. So it is ultimately your choice. It's not about God being fair. But here's the other thing about this, and this is what's interesting, and I'm trying to remember. I think it's in the book of James, but I can't remember. I apologize. But our pastor was talking about it last night. You are also judged based on what you are exposed to, what you know, and what you could know. So, because people, one of the first things people say is, well, what about the native kid in Zimbabwe who's running around naked in the jungle with a spear and has never heard of Jesus. See, got you there. No, that's fine. Every single person is judged based on what they know. And that kid running around in the jungle in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, by the way, is not a real place. But that kid is only judged on what that kid is exposed to. And in the case of someone who has never in their life heard of the Bible, never heard the name of Jesus, never met a Christian, they're basically judged based on what you might call in the modern context natural theology, which means that what you can, because you can see, and Paul, or not Paul, I think it's in Proverbs, it mentions natural theology. I think Paul actually does address natural theology as well, is that you can see God in the world even without the Bible and all that. You just don't have the formal training. You may not know. But Alex, I know Zimbabwe is real, but Zimbabwe is not. You gotta, there's a couple more syllables in there. It's Zimbabwe. So, but the everybody's going to be arguing, about Zimbabwe for the rest of the day. But the kid in Zimbabwe is only judged on what that kid was exposed to. However, and so people are like, oh, well, then I'm fine because I've never been. Well, no, if you can hear my voice, you've been exposed to the full deal, And so and that's the problem. You can't plead ignorance if you're in the Western world. But where the next step comes is false teachers. And this is where, and this is kind of interesting as well, is let's suppose, and again, we'll go to activity X or lifestyle X, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We don't need to focus in on any particular thing because I'm not trying to pick on anybody. So you want to practice X, whatever it is. Now, so you grow up and you're in a liberal family, and your mom and dad tell you, oh no, X is fine, it's normal, it's natural, everybody does X, it's perfectly okay. And you go to a liberal school and they say, you know what, X is perfectly okay, there's nothing wrong with X. Then you happen to find a progressive church. I'm not going to say liberal, but progressive church. Because that's the new breed of Christianity, what they refer to themselves as progressive Christianity. And I don't like the term progressive, but that's what they call themselves. So I'm going to be respectful and call them what they call themselves, even though I think that blasphemous would be a more accurate description. But they call themselves progressive, so I will call them progressive. And in these progressive churches, they say, oh yeah, X is fine. And by the way, I went to a church that, I looked up the church that I attended when I was a kid. And if you want to look it up, you can look it up yourself online. It's called the Christ Church United Methodist. It is in Santa Rosa, California. And, and of course, they put right there on their website that, oh yeah, you practice X, come on down, and so they're perfectly okay with people that do things that other churches are like, well, wait, whoa, what, So when the Methodist Church splits, I'm pretty sure I know which direction that church is going. which if you don't know about the Methodist Church, they're about to split. So you go to a progressive church and you find this progressive church, and this progressive church teaches you that no, X is okay, the Bible is wrong, or they say that part of the Bible is wrong, or they say that, oh, that part of the Bible has been misinterpreted over the years, or they say that part of the Bible doesn't count because grace, or whatever their excuse is. Because there's several different excuses that they use to try and justify why X is okay in their mind. They do it all the time. And then you die, because everybody's going to die. The one thing that's absolutely certain, every single one of us, sooner or later, is going to die. And so we die, and we face our Maker, and you're like, but wait a minute, I thought X was okay. I was told by everyone. Now, we go back to, were you trying, with your darndest, were you trying to follow Christ? If the answer to that is yes, you're still in, okay? You were misled. That's true. But where was your heart? Was your heart in the right direction? If the answer to that is yes, you were trying to follow Christ with your heart, bam, you're in. And so you will actually be okay. But here's what's going to happen. Every single person that taught you about how doing X was okay, unless they themselves were misled, they're going to be judged at a much harsher level. And this is biblical. Is that those that teach false doctrines are going to be in a whole lot of trouble. Because what happens, and that's why I got to be careful. And one thing that and it kind of made me pause for a minute about maybe I should stop doing the Sunday morning live streams, because one thing that Corey was saying is like, look, if you go out there and you start influencing people and teaching them things about the Bible that are straight up untrue, if you start teaching people that X is okay when X is not okay, guess what? Let's say I start teaching on YouTube that X is fine, and I start just putting video after video after video that X is okay, and the Bible says X is okay, and all these videos, and I convince 1,000 people out there that X is okay. Now, I'm responsible for all that sin. That's on my ducket. So that's a problem. And depending on how my attitude towards it, that can even stop me getting into heaven at all. Because if I know full well, and this is where I think where teachers, pastors, anybody that is in a position of power, where they need to be extremely careful about this stuff, is not only what are they teaching, but what do they know is true? Because if I'm teaching from a theological perspective that X is okay, and I genuinely believe that X is okay, then again, it may go back to whoever is influencing me. Or if I'm digging in the scriptures and looking for excuses to make X okay, then it's on me, right? Because I'm not looking into the scripture with an open heart. I'm looking into the scriptures with an agenda, right? It depends on where is that idea of X is okay is coming from. Is it coming from me or is it coming from someone else? But if I know, so it might affect my status as far as post-judgment, which a lot of people don't realize that there is status in heaven. But it might affect my status post-judgment. But here's the catch. If I know full well, if I absolutely know that X is not okay, if I think that, okay, the Bible clearly says X is not okay, but I'm going to teach people that X is okay so that I can be popular, so that I can grow my church numbers, so that I can, fill the collection plate, and all that. Then that is something called blasphemy. And that will stop me from getting in. Because, and so blasphemy is to actually speak against. And God has a very, it's funny. There's an old, there's an old thing. Oh, I hope there's a special place in hell for that person. There actually is a special place in hell for blasphemers. So, yeah, you don't want to be a person who does that, that knows that what they're teaching is a false teaching, but teaches it anyway. A blasphemer, a true blasphemer, is the absolute worst thing you can be. So so I think people like Kenneth Copeland, there is, the man is either insane or an atheist, or, because if he truly believes that there is no way in heck that you can read the Bible and believe the stuff that he's teaching. Right? But he does it anyway, right? And he does it because he makes millions upon millions of dollars doing it. That, to me, is so dangerous. So freaking dangerous. So yeah, that's so teachers, preachers, that kind of thing is where the ultimate responsibility is. And you do not, so if you take on a position of leadership, then you need to make absolutely sure that you are teaching truthfully, that you're teaching from the heart, that like when I'm teaching, like on Sunday morning when we're talking about theology, I'm certainly open to the idea that I can be wrong, but I am absolutely going to tell you what I believe. And the reason for that is because if I start lying to you about this stuff and I'm not, that's like the worst possible thing I could do for myself. And it's also something that I wouldn't want to throw on you guys, right? I'm not going to blow smoke up your collective rear ends, because I want you guys to be exposed to the truth. I don't want you guys to be exposed to more lies. And I understand that some of you guys disagree with me wholeheartedly. I get that. But I know that you guys understand that I love each and every one of you. And, so it would be wrong for me to lie to you. However, just because we disagree doesn't mean we can't all agree that A, Star Trek is awesome, and B, Star Trek Discovery is not awesome. So at least we all have that in common. Except for, of course, Yosef from the future, who thinks that Star Trek Discovery is awesome because he is a blasphemer. End of speech. All right, so I don't know if you guys liked my pontification today or not, but I had a little something to say. And let me know if you know what you think of that kind of messaging style at the beginning of these streams. But that was kind of my thing. Because I may be doing, after, I will tell you, honestly, I may be doing more of those types of streams, like theological live streams, after we move. Because, once the dust settles from our moving. I can't really tell you why yet, but there's reasons behind it. But that's months away. We got to figure everything out as far as the move and Social Security and, yeah. Anyway, so back to the chat. Alex was first in the chat. Thank you. Alex says good morning for Georgia. Good morning, Alex. And then Bradley came in. Alex Lemons came in. Julesie's here. Trustin says good morning. Alex said, God loves the gays. How could he not? Just as melodramatic as them. That's just wrong. That is just wrong. And thank you so much, Joseph. Throws a couple of those fake euro dollars at me. I appreciate it, my friend. And says, you are allowed to be wrong on your channel, jerk. I don't know why you said that, because you know you're wrong, right? You know it. It's okay. Mr. I'm gonna do my duties for my wife. It's okay, Joseph. There it is.
Controls the universe.
You are allowed to be wrong on your channel, jerk.
Joseph, you know I love you. And you know the artwork on your icon, definitely among the, well, it's there. Alex says, would Anakin Skywalker go to heaven? Well, only if he accepted Jesus Christ, which is not a part of the Star Wars saga. So hard to say. You know, I mean, because Star Wars is just about straight up good, evil. I mean, you're either on the light side or the dark side. There's not a, you know, there's not a savior, so to speak. And, you know, Anakin is just a pawn in a game of good versus evil. So, I don't know. Average Ev says, not 100% sure on the nature of heaven and hell, but I'm very strong leanings based on scripture. Well, I have my feelings on it too, but I just always want to make sure, and you know me, Average Ev, I just want to make sure that I make it clear when there's something that is debatable. That if this is something, especially like when we talk about the nature of hell, because people say, oh my gosh, you're going to burn me for all eternity. Well, that's one opinion, you know, but there's several ideas of hell that range from, like, I tend to think based on scripture that hell is utter destruction. That hell basically, you know, means that you are executed and you're destroyed. There are other people that believe that hell is living in a world that is completely separated from God. There are some people that believe that hell is an eternity of torture with, you know, little demons with pitchforks stabbing you, stab, stab, stab. I don't buy into that at all. I could believe some kind of a world separated from God. I could, or the death, but I really, really doubt the eternity of torture, except for the blasphemers, which is something that you find in Revelation, but it's hard to say because Revelation is apocalyptic text, so that could be symbolic. Here's something I've been contemplating for a long time. Can psychopaths who lack the capacity for remorse and selflessness be able to attain salvation? Absolutely. And that's actually something that is part of what I was talking about here, because everybody is accountable to what they are capable of being accountable for. So everybody is accountable. Absolutely everybody is accountable. But everybody is only accountable to what they are capable of being accountable for. A psychopath is intelligent. A psychopath is capable of understanding. And so, yes, a psychopath is capable of salvation, but and capable of making those choices, and it is up to that psychopath to make those choices. However, is a psychopath capable of, you know, some of the things? Probably not. But yeah, everybody is judged based on their individual abilities. It's just like if judgment was based on some physical task, and someone had no legs, they wouldn't be judged at the same level as someone that did, right? But they would still be judged on how much they did relative to people that had other people that had no legs. It's better to explain the practical reason for getting married, like taking relationship being more serious if both people make promise, better than threatening with hell. Well, first of all, I don't. If you're doing something because of the threat of hell, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. The Bible has some very good advice as to how to live your life, and the interesting thing about it is that if you follow the advice of the Bible, it works. Um, and you know that's all fine and dandy, but honestly, here's the funny thing about it: if you call yourself a Christian, it doesn't matter if you think that this will work or that this is, you know, if this particular methodology is what you should do. Because if you are a Christian, if you genuinely believe in the Judeo-Christian God, I'm not talking about if you're just a pagan or, and not to disrespect my pagan friends out there, or you're an atheist, not to disrespect my atheist friends out there. But if you are a genuine Christian, and you say, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe in the Trinity, I believe in all this stuff, then the simple fact that the Bible says, here's what you do, okay, end of discussion, that's what you do. What, you know, what more is it? And in fact, this is something Corey said last night, that it's dumbfounding sometimes, because this woman came to Corey, was really upset with him, because Corey went off a few weeks ago, and during one of his sermons, about gossip, right? Talking about the fact, and this is true, that gossip is judged more harshly in the Bible than some other sins. And he was saying, you know, you need to be very careful about gossiping, and that's something that is horrible in the church, that gossip is all over the place. And this woman came up to Corey and says, I just don't understand what you're talking about. Why are you saying that you can't gossip and be a Christian? And he said, well, because the Bible says don't gossip. So if you're gossiping and you know that Jesus says don't gossip, you're not a Christian. You know, so the simplest answer is, if you call yourself a Christian, and that's one of the reasons that you should be a part of a small group, you should be a part of a church, you should study the Bible, because the better you understand what you should do, the easier it is to follow it, and the easier it is to follow it, then, you know, the better, honestly, that your life will be, and the better your outlook on life will be. And it's not like, oh no, now I got to sacrifice a goat today or something. It's really not that complicated. Alex says, too lazy to hate. Well, hate actually is not that hard to do. Love is harder than hate. Lord M is in the house, says, even people who hate the former president of the United States or the current president of the United States, that is a sin. That is actually a sin at another level. Let me tell you, the Bible specifically says to pray for those in authority, because all authority comes from God. And so you should have been, you know, and this is something I get so pissed off about, because when Donald Trump was in office, you should have been praying for him. Now that Joe Biden is in office, you should be praying for him. Whoever takes office after Joe Biden, you should be praying for him or her. It does not matter what political party they are affiliated with. Period. You pray for the leadership above you. You pray for your mayor. You pray for your governor. You pray for your senator. You pray for your congressman. You pray for your president. And whatever you have, you know, in Slovakia, you pray for your goat herder and your dictator, or whatever you have there. And, you know, so you pray for those in leadership above you. You absolutely do. And I will tell you that me and my wife do. When we pray together, we always pray for all those in leadership above us, including our pastor, Corey, and his staff. We pray for our city, our state, our federal officials, and we pray for the President of the United States. Whenever we pray together, we pray for all those people. And while I was working, I would always pray for my supervisor. You should always be praying for those in authority above you. And it does not matter if you like them. It does not matter if you agree with them. And by the way, and this is another thing, you do not pray for them to convert to your way of thinking. I don't say, oh, well, I pray that Joe Biden changes to be a conservative so that no. You pray for Joe Biden's health. You pray for his success. You pray for his happiness. You pray for him to be protected. All that good stuff. You do not pray for him to suddenly have a conversion to your way of thinking. But ultimately, I pray for him to do whatever God's will is. And so, yes, you absolutely, it is a sin to hate on the president or former president. Yes, it absolutely is. Valor says, Jesus, I got yours as a jerk. Everything is a sin that is that he forced a woman to carry his child, and then his son have his murdered to cleanse sin. That shouldn't be a sin. Well, first of all, he didn't force Mary. If you look at the way, I mean, it was kind of not. It's not like he raped Mary, But, whatever. People have different opinions on it. And yeah, we talked about Zimbabwe versus Zimbabwe. Valor says, I was woke up to go to the bathroom, see my phone flashing. I was on my way back, seeing you are streaming and stayed up. Well, thank you, Valor. Glad to wake you up or keep you awake while going to the bathroom. Lord Ebb says, so tripping on ecstasy is fine with me and Jesus. It's fine with me and Jesus. That is what you're saying. That is not at all what I'm saying. And in fact, as far as recreational drugs, I mean, the Bible doesn't address drugs specifically, but it does address intoxication indirectly, mainly through talking about alcohol. And it does not say that you cannot ingest alcohol for pleasure. And that's something that a lot of Christians get very uptight about. There's nothing in the Bible that says that drinking is a sin. And then on certain things, if it's not directly addressed in the Bible, we have to logically extrapolate from what the Bible does say. So when we talk about drugs, we have to extrapolate out from, well, what does the Bible say? And how can we logically extrapolate that to drugs? So, number one, the Bible does specifically say that we are to obey the law, which means that if we're talking about a drug that is illegal, it's off limits, okay? Because we are called by the Bible to obey the law. So sorry, if ecstasy is illegal where you live, that already rules it out, okay? So if the drug is legal, okay, so that changes that. So it makes it so it's legal. So in most states in the United States, a certain herbal supplement that I would love to take for the pain that I go through with my MS is legal. It's unfortunately I live in one of the 12 states where it's not, which sucks. But if it was, and so I don't take it. And the only reason I do not take it is because it's illegal. If it was legal here, I absolutely would for the pain that I'm going through. And by the way, medicinal is addressed directly in the Bible because Timothy drank for medicinal purposes. Because he had a stomach issue that Paul told Timothy to drink a little wine to deal with. However, where the Bible then draws the line is what is called drunkenness. And this is another matter that there is some debate in scholarship, is what exactly is drunkenness. Because there's three basic schools of thought. From the extremely, we'll just say, prudish to the very liberal interpretations. The extremely prudish interpretation, and I'm curious, I don't know exactly where Aberjam comes in. So Aberjam, I'll be looking for your response on this. On the very conservative side, drunkenness is drinking to the point where you can feel any hint of intoxication. So if you feel a buzz, you're sinning. Okay, that's the conservative side of drunkenness. The moderate drunkenness is basically if you drink to the point where you're falling down drunk, that's drunkenness. All right. So if it's okay to drink, it's okay to get a little buzz. It is not okay to get wasted. All right. And then the more liberal application of drunkenness is that basically to be the town drunk, to make it a lifestyle, basically to be an alcoholic, to drink constantly. So those are, the problem is that it's not 100% clear, because obviously, like, if you look at the way that Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding, and people have been partying for several days, it's probably a given that those people were not completely sober. Just saying. So to say that you can't even feel a buzz, I am definitely thinking that Jesus felt a buzz at that party, but I don't know. It doesn't say, and Jesus was feeling pretty good. It doesn't say that in the Bible anywhere. But I'm curious to see what Aberjam has to say on that. Alex, thank you so much. Throws $4.99 in, says, I lived in Russia for 6 years, which has a dictator.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
I lived in Russia for 6 years, which has a dictator. Should the Christians there pray for Putin's health? What about following his orders?
Yes, the Christian should absolutely pray for his health. And by the way, Alex, and this is the interesting thing about that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I am so glad you mentioned that, because the person who wrote specifically about praying for those in leadership above you was a man named Paul. And Paul, at the time, was writing specifically about he was living under a dictator as well. That dictator was called Emperor Nero. Emperor Nero, if you check your history books, was Batwoman crazy. And a few years later, Emperor Nero executed Paul. And Paul stood by his word. And in fact, Paul wrote part of the Bible while sitting in prison waiting to get executed by Emperor Nero, who Paul himself was basically spent time praying for. So absolutely, Christians in Russia should pray for their leadership. It does not matter. And by the way, sometimes, yes, sometimes, because all authority comes from God. And there's an old saying in Christianity, all means all, and that's all means. And so, yes, sometimes God puts people in place, not just to make things all roses and unicorns, sometimes as kind of a, hey, you know what? You guys, we need to whip you guys into shape. Average says, drunkenness is hard to address given it's on a sliding scale. For me, it's as soon as you feel it starts to affect your normal functions, you stop, preferably even before that. So you're more on the conservative side of it, which is fine. I'm just curious. One exception, I might accept that you're undergoing exceedingly painful procedure as it's your only means of anesthesia. So that, how do you take, let me ask you this, Aberjam, and I'll get back to the regular chat in just a moment, but I'm curious. And then but I'm just going to ask you this and let you think about it, Aberjam. How do you take, and I can't remember the exact quote, but I believe it's in Proverbs where it says to give a man strong drink who is drowning his sorrows, kind of thing. I mean, because that's not anesthetic. It's not really medical. It's just, man, you're depressed. Get drunk. That's what it sounds like. Now, I'm genuinely curious about that. But the way I tend to agree, I don't think you should drink just to get wasted. And so I don't have a problem with people getting a buzz. I tend to be on the more liberal side of it. However, I also think that you should not drink to the point where you're making a fool out of yourself. Like when we do the virtual pub, I don't get drunk, right? I've gotten a buzz a couple of times, but I've never gotten drunk. And I think that, because if you get drunk, you lose control. You might, you can really ruin your reputation doing that. And so I tend to say, yeah, if you get a buzz, that's time to stop. I also, and I feel this as far as with things like the herbal supplement, like I want to use it strictly for medical reasons. I'm not a big fan of recreational use, but if you understand what its effects are and you're able to, because the problem is unlike drinking, it is strictly for intoxication purposes or pain killing. There's no other thing. I mean, you don't inhale it or eat it or whatever for pleasure like you can for drinking. You strictly get it for the intoxicating effects. And so, I think that there's a little bit more of an issue there as far as how much do you intend to ingest, how do you plan on feeling afterwards. So it's a little bit grayer in that department, but I certainly do not object to anybody using it for medical purposes. And I think that if somebody is using it in moderation, I think it would fall under the same guidelines as drinking. Valor says, before I woke up to use the bathroom, I had a dream and I ordered DoorDash and went to get it. You were sitting and pointing at your watch. Could have been worse. Could have been Bird of Prey 5. That'd be hilarious to have it like, the doorbell rings for DoorDash and it's Bird of Prey 5 in his bed at your front door. Man, that would be awesome. Like if I had a bunch of money to produce videos, I would make that as a video. Like just have some random person, order DoorDash at their house, and then you hear the doorbell and they get up and then they open the door and there's Bird of Prey 5 in the bed and he's like, and like have it the lady answers the door and he goes, "Hello, Pearl, it's Bird of Prey 5." I just love that. All right, so Tristan says, like last week's stream, this one is also hitting far too close to home. I'm sorry, Tristan, if that's a bad thing. I already read that. Thank you again for the €2, Joseph. Even though I make fun of you, I love you, buddy. And Alex says, pontificating is a good way to set the tone and topic. Well, thank you, I think. You are making your God sound petty, name-calling, murder, lust, etc. It's okay, but heaven forbid, don't lie, make fun of your God, or hell is your location when you die. Well, I think that you're kind of missing the point then, Valor. Honestly, if that's... first of all, I didn't say don't lie, make fun of your God, or hell is... I mean, you're completely twisting what I said. When did I say don't lie, make fun of your God, or, you're completely twisting what I said. I never said anything about making fun of God. And I've made jokes at God's expense. I think God has a sense of humor. I think God invented humor. So I'm not sure where you're getting that from. I think, I genuinely don't know where you're getting that from. Because you are completely, I would say, yeah, don't, as far as don't lie, I said don't mislead. There's a difference. Don't blaspheme. Don't, that's a little different. But when I say make fun of God, Average Jeff says, I don't know why Joseph called you a jerk. It's not like you called him a short butt or something. Well, yeah, I know, like you. Alex said, the problem is being sure about whether the interpretation is correct. I had debate about whether we should evangelize. The interpretation of what? Of the Bible? I think we know what the Bible says on a lot of topics. The problem is that people think we don't know what the interpretation, it's really amazing to me, Alex, and I'm not picking on you. It's just this is a common issue. Is that a lot of people say, "Oh, well, we don't, we have all these crazy different interpretations, all these crazy." You know what? Unless you're reading the Jehovah's Witnesses Bible, because they have a special Bible that's just for them, or one of these other fringe group Bibles. If you're reading any of the mainstream Bibles out there, the message is the same. Sure, the wording is phrased a little different, and the only reason it's phrased a little different is to try and make it a little easier to digest. Like some people love the artistic nature of the King James Bible. The King James Bible is put together to be poetic, Shakespearean, if you will. And it is a beautiful read, but it's not very easy to digest as far as intellectually. And so more modern translations, like my personal favorite is the Holman, by the Holman, or let's see, what is it called? Right here, the Holman Christian Standard Bible. This is my personal favorite. It's very easy to read, and it's a good solid Bible. But the message is the same. There's not an interpretation problem, except for sometimes there's an understanding problem. Sometimes there's a problem, and where the problems are is usually contextual, right? Where we don't understand what does this, what exactly, or unless I'm misunderstanding what you're talking about. As far as what the words say, we got that down for the most part. There's a few little things here and there that we don't. But as far as the major stuff, we got it, right? We know what the words are. But sometimes we struggle a little bit with what they mean, if that's what you're talking about. Things like, what exactly is hell, because it's vague. But that's because the reason it's vague is because it's not that important. It's preferable that you don't go there. Do you really? And that's the thing. Everybody thinks that and this is something that happened with with some of the great artwork that was inspired by the Bible. Is all of a sudden we started getting all this artwork of demons and hellfire and pitchforks and all that stuff. And there's some beautiful artwork associated with this stuff. We got Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost and all this stuff about hell, because hell is exciting and hell would make a great action movie compared to heaven. But most of what we think about hell didn't come out of this book. It came out of things like Dante's Inferno, not the Bible. The problem is that we focus so much on it when it's ultimately not an important subject. And so people say, well, you keep threatening us with hell. You know what? The Bible hardly talks about it. It's not an important topic. So you're right. Christians overemphasize hell, and so do non-Christians. I believe conflicting opinions on torture versus destruction comes from a misunderstanding of paradise and hell, Lazarus, the rich man, and the destruction of death and Hades. I agree that I think that the Lazarus and the rich man is where a lot of it comes from. Like people argue on whether or not Lazarus and the rich man is literal or simply a parable. And whether that was supposed to be an accurate description of heaven and hell, which I don't think it is meant to be, because I don't think that, if you're heaven and hell, you can like look and see each other. That would be horrible. But yeah, I tend to agree. The way your mouth moves reminds me of the OG Planet of the Apes mask. Dear God, you're Dr. Zaius. Okay. Wow, that's weird. Valor says, if you don't, I don't get it. If people make mistakes, shouldn't they be allowed to learn from their mistakes, no matter how many lifetimes it takes? Yet to destroy a soul over something petty is silly. Not necessarily. First of all, no matter how many lifetimes it takes, one lifetime is enough. I mean, first of all, what makes you think that you should get more than one lifetime? I don't understand that. Number two is that the interesting thing about it is that nobody goes to hell on a mistake. You don't go, oops, I went to hell. It's a choice. You know, everybody knows, everybody's exposed to the truth, and you make a conscious decision whether or not to accept or reject the truth. How you react to it is completely up to you. If you say thanks but no thanks, then you face judgment. And granted, Valor, you know what? I accept the fact that I could be wrong. But if I'm right, then, and when you face judgment, and God's there saying, well, Valor, you know, Michael told you. And you say, well, I didn't believe him. And you say, well, he told you. You know, and and I would recommend you read the parable of Lazarus. The problem is that people, you can have 25 lifetimes. It ain't going to matter. You're going to reject it 25 times. And the interesting thing is that most people who reject the idea, well, and you know, they're getting what they're expecting: destruction. And if it's just separation, if it's just eternal separation, well, that's not so bad, right? You're just living away from the God that you don't believe exists anyway. Then Valor says, you said once that we had to respect the man who holds the office, but respect is earned, not given. That's the opposite of the truth. In my opinion, respect is given, not earned. If you have to earn respect, it's not, then it's meaningless. To be honest with you, and that's the problem, is that everybody that says, no, you have to earn my respect, what you're doing by doing that is putting yourself above the other person. Doesn't work that way. If you want to sit there and say that you are more important than the President of the United States, and therefore that person needs to earn your respect, sorry, Valor, you are not more important than the President of the United States. You're just not. And neither am I. That's just a fact. And you know what? I want Joe Biden to be successful. I may not agree with his policies. I may not agree with his practices. But you know what? I am an American citizen, and so I don't want this country to go down. So I want him to be successful. And whoever takes over after him, I want them to be successful. I don't care what party they're a part of. I don't agree with the Democrats or the Republicans. I think both parties are corrupt. I think both parties are full of crap. But I'm going to pray for the President of the effing United States. Because they're the president. Since I'm in Kuroga, do I pray for the God Emperor? Well, that's interesting, Professor. That's the, it's actually, let me bring, you know, since you mentioned it, it's right here. Okay, yeah, right here. It says in Romans, the book of Romans, it says, and you shall pray for all the leaders above you, because God put all authority in place, except for Berto pray 5, for he is of the devil. Do not pray for him. So no. Jordan says, have you tried essential oils for your pain? Yeah, it didn't really do anything. Aberdeen says, drunkenness is hard to address given that it's on... Oh, I already read that. Let's see. BK Dan says, happy Sunday. How you doing? Alex says, the way your mouth moves reminds me of the OG panel of the apes. Dear God, your doctor's eyes says, well, you said that. You don't have to repeat your comments, guys. I know I'm behind, but please don't repeat the comments because that just makes me go further behind. Alex says, I'm having a buzz waiting for a transfer at the airport. You know, it's funny, look, Joseph, you're at the airport heading home. Why aren't you talking to your lovely wife or doing your duties with her in like the baggage claim area? Mm-hmm. No, I don't know. That's weird. Max says, no, the problem is you still won't take back Gorgonar. Even after he apologized for the black eye, he still thinks about you, about that night underneath the moonlight in the desert. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about there. Sorry, I meant blasphemy. I don't know how to spell it. Did I miss something? I might have missed what you said. Valor, I'm not 100% sure. But, so sorry about blasphemy, don't know how to spell it. Look at how to spell it. Making fun of lying was the wrong set of words to use. My apologies. Oh, yeah. Blasphemy is very different than simply making fun of or lying. It's very specific. Because blasphemy is actively speaking against this. And think for a minute. And honestly, Valor, think about this for a second. If this book is the truth, right? If this book is ultimately true, then to actively speak against it, to actively teach people to do things against this book, would be the ultimate crime. If this is the truth. It predicates the idea that this is the truth. If this book is false, then blasphemy is meaningless, right? So I'll give you that much. If Christianity is false, then blasphemy means nothing. But if it's true, then absolutely blasphemy is a huge crime. Professor Manny Specs has a splitting headache. I am so sorry, Professor, but then again, you are in Kuroga. That'll do it. Aberjam says, having read Proverbs 31:6 in context, I would say it falls into the category of give them over to their sins, which is the theme we see in the New Testament. Really, you think so? You think give them over to their sins is how you would interpretate that? Interpretate. Let me bring that. Let's see. It would be easier to just do it here. All right, so you're talking about, it was Proverbs 31:6. 31. All right, so it says 31:6. Let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. That's verse 7. Now, I'm not sure that I would agree with you on that. I mean, if you say, like if we look at let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those in anguish. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. That doesn't sound like giving them over to their sin. It just sounds like, man, these guys are having a rough time. Let them drink so that they can forget about how much their life sucks. I don't see how that is giving them over to their sins. I got to ask you, Aberjam, where you see that. Maybe you're reading a different, this is NIV. Let me switch over to my personal favorite, the Holman. And let's see.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Your stream washes away my sins. I'll go to heaven.
Wow. Thank you for the €2. But no, I definitely do not wash away sins. I do not claim that level of power, my Slovakian friend. I do not claim to send anyone to heaven. Yeah, reading the Holman is exactly the same. Dang. The Holman is exactly the same. Did I click on the search? Maybe not. Okay, it's almost the same. Give beer to one who is dying and wine to one whose life is bitter. Let him drink so that he can forget his poverty and remember his trouble no more. I mean, again, I don't see where you're seeing it. It sounds like you're giving strong drink to those who have a really hard life and are in poverty. Because and the thing is, you got to look at and again, remember my favorite title of a Star Trek Discovery episode, context is for kings, right? So, which is ironic in this particular case, because just before that we talk about kings. Remember, in those two verses, and we're going to get a little Bible study going on here, guys, so I apologize if you hate Bible study. But this is where Proverbs, for those of you that don't know, Proverbs is actually a collection, it's called a wisdom book. It is actually a collection of wise sayings. And what's interesting about this particular one is that those two verses that I just read are about people who are suffering and are poor, who are basically, it says, give beer to one who's dying, one whose life is bitter, let them drink so they can forget their poverty and remember their trouble no more. So they're talking about people whose lives suck, right? Now, just before that, we talk about avoiding alcohol for people in power, which is a very interesting contrast. So verses 4 and 5, the two verses before this, it is not for kings, Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine or for rulers to desire beer. Otherwise, they will drink, forget what is decreed, and pervert justice for all the oppressed. Then it says, give beer to one who is dying and wine to one whose life is bitter. Let him drink so that he can forget his poverty and remember his trouble no more. You don't give, the king does not need booze. The king, and in fact, it's very important that those in leadership be sober-minded. That's what it's talking about here. That those that are in leadership, because what happens if they drink? They'll forget what they decreed and they will pervert justice for all. Gee, we've never seen that in society, where our leadership just becomes so intoxicated in whatever they're doing that they forget about the commoners out there, right? That never happens. So booze is, so basically what it's saying here is not that give them over to their sin. It's saying that intoxicants are not for those in power. It's for those that are suffering. That the intoxicants are to help those. The feelings you get from things like alcohol is to help those that need it, not for partying for those that don't. That's my interpretation of this. I'll get to what your response is in a minute, Aberjam. I know I'm a little bit behind, but I'm starting to catch up. I'm curious to see what you think of my Bible studies. I like the new stream format for the Sunday stream. Start out with the main subject or topic. It makes for a great stream. We stay more or less on topic. Keep it up. Thank you. I appreciate that, Tristan. Alex, I really had it in for Taylor. You really had it in for Taylor?
He who controls the spice
Not sure what you mean.
controls the universe.
Mark chapter 9 verse 1, Jesus promises that there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. So in 30 to 60 years should have returned.
We'll get to that, Alex, in just a moment. I already got an answer for that one. That's a very, very easy one. So, and in fact, that's one of those verses that is one of the most misunderstood verses that's commonly used by atheists to try and say that the Bible's full of crap. But that's actually a prophecy, if you will, that was fulfilled just a couple of verses later. So we'll talk about that. Give me a few. Robert says, hello this morning, fellow old man. Hell's not that important. Yeshua taught a lot about hell. He taught about it, but what I'm saying is it's not as important as we make it out to be, Robert. We make it out to be that hell. Hey, don't do this, hell, right? And that's really, Jesus does talk about hell a few times, but it's not the main subject. Most of what Jesus talks about is sin. He focuses on sin a lot more than he focuses on hell. It's okay if you can show Jesus. Is it okay if I show how Jesus can be interpreted alternatively? No one at Bible study has refuted it. Well, I'm not sure what you mean. How Jesus can be interpreted alternately. If you're talking about picking and choosing verses, well, that's called cherry picking, and what people tend to do, and this is unfortunately how many preachers try to preach. Is they'll take a verse from this book over here and a verse from this book over here, and they'll put them together right here, and then they'll grab this verse here and they'll put it right there, then they'll grab this verse and put it right there, and then they'll say, see, the Bible says, and whatever their message is. Right? That's not how it works. And that's why our church practices what we call expository teaching, where we start at chapter 1, verse 1 of a book, and we go through the entirety of that book, all the warts and all. And that means we do not skip over the awkward parts. And the awkward parts, most churches skip over the stuff that they don't want to deal with. They skip over the doctrines that they just don't want to have to deal with. They certainly don't want, because you know what? If churches were actually teaching what the Bible actually said, the churches would look very different today. But instead, the churches are monuments to how much money they can collect. Let's see. Alex says, henceforth I shall address you as Sias Jr. Okay. Yeah, only people close to the level of president of the USA is the Pope, the head of China, and maybe the UN. Well, it doesn't really matter. Even they should, anybody who is under the president should be praying for the president. That's the point. Wow, which translation includes not to pray for Bird to pray 5. Never seen that translation. Oh, it's there. You just got to look. Alex says, do you believe in the serpent from Genesis is Satan or a separate individual? I've heard it interpreted both ways. It seems like it's Satan, especially since it's referred to in Revelation. Let's see. If you read all Proverbs 31, the king's mother is advising against drinking wine. Yes, we just went over that. I respect you more than the president, and yes, I hold you in higher regard. I also don't like representatives nor Republican or Democratic parties. That's why I'm independent. I understand, and I appreciate that, Valor. I truly do. All right, and believe me, there are a lot of people I respect more than I respect Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Right? I mean, I believe me, I have no problem with saying that, like, heck, I respect Berto Pray 5 more than I respect Donald Trump. Even though Berto Pray 5 and I fight like cats and dogs about Donald Trump, right? That's just facts. But when Donald Trump was in office, I was praying for Donald Trump. He's still the president of the United States. And, I'm still, I don't, and I'm sorry, and I know I've gotten on people about this. I'm not going to call Joe Biden Lazy Joe or just Joe or whatever. He's either President Biden or Joe Biden or whatever you want to call him, but you need to be respectful. But I usually call him President Biden because that's his title, and that's the proper way to address the President of the United States. You don't, if Joe Biden were to call me up and say something, I would call him Mr. President. I wouldn't call him Joe. If Donald Trump were to call me up right now, I would call him Mr. President because he's an ex-president, which means that his title is Mr. President. I think. You call an ex-president Mr. President, don't you? I don't remember. Maybe not. But whatever it is, I would call them by their proper title. End of discussion. How do we know the Bible you own is the true Bible? It could very well be translated incorrectly by the church for whatever reason, or by printing them. Because you can access, first of all, Valor, that's why you can access pretty much every interpretation that's available, both online and at bookstores and stuff. You can also access the manuscripts online. There's, and if you want to start studying some Greek and Hebrew, which, I got a little bit of stuff there for that, but not a ton. There, you can do that. You can. There's a lot you can do. Now, if you want to say, well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? Well, you could say that about anything. How do you know the moon is really up there? Then you could start arguing about flat Earth, and you can start arguing that the universe is really only 100 miles across. By the way, France doesn't really exist because you've never been there. How do you know it's really there? Well, I've talked to people. Oh, how do you know they're not pretending? How do you know Joseph is really in Europe? He could just be some bot on YouTube. How do you know I'm really a person and not computer-generated image? Right? How do you know I'm not just a computer program like Max Headroom back in the day, just a little more sophisticated? You don't know. So, yeah, you can say, how do you know, how do you know, how do you know? There is a certain level where you have to say, well, that's what faith is. It's trust. I do believe that this is true. I've studied it. I've also studied other interpretations. I've looked at Greek and Hebrew manuscripts, which, I look at it and it looks like a weird foreign language to me, but I've looked at it. I've had to have other people translate it because I can't translate Greek and Hebrew. But from everything that I've studied, it appears pretty consistent. All right, so let's talk about Mark 9. So since I'm right there in the chat. So Mark 9. All right, let's go to my favorite translation, Holman. And this is interesting because, by the way, this particular this is like one of those haha gotcha verses that atheists tend to use to try and say how the Bible is full of crap. So Mark 9:1 in the Holman version says, then he said to them, I assure you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God come in power. Wow. That is pretty freaking cool, right? And so it's like, wow, that sure didn't happen. Okay, well, let's read verse 2. That's verse 1. Okay. After 6 days, so 6 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, led them up onto a high mountain by themselves to be alone. He was transformed in front of them. His clothes became dazzling, extremely white, when no launderer on earth could whiten them. Elijah appeared with them with Moses, and they were talking to Jesus. What is this? They go to 6 days later. Peter, James, and John go up to the mountaintop with Jesus, and they see Jesus turn into this, glowing white figure, and Elijah and Moses show up, and they start hanging out on top of the mountain. I assure you that some standing here, I'm pretty sure Peter, James, and John were standing there, will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God come in power. They sure did. They saw it 6 days later. 6 days. Can I drop a mic? Bam. That's the very next thing that happens. Jesus says, hey, I'm telling you guys, some of y'all are going to see the power, man. You're going to see it. And then, hey, Peter, James, John, come on. I'm going to show you something. And, you know, and then he showed him. Indy Tiger says, Solid Trekker sounds like you like give comfort to those in need to me. We should give comfort to those in need. Jason says, good morning, how you doing? Alex says, thanks. No one in the Bible study has been able to explain except retconning Jesus to have meant the destruction of the Jewish temple. No one in Bible study has been able to explain except for retconning Jesus to have meant the destruction of the temple. Really? Did they not read verse 2? See, that's the problem. This is the big problem with people picking it. And remember I talked to you about expository teaching? This is why you should always do expository teaching. Because what people do is they read verse 9:1 and they read it in isolation and they're like, well, wait, nobody ever saw the kingdom come. What the heck are they talking about? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And it's the next effing verse. Right? It's right there. Biggest facepalm ever. But nobody ever bothers to read the Bible in sequence. They just pick a verse. You know, this is the big problem with Bible studies these days. What we do is, let's take, that's why I have a small Bible study I do on Wednesday mornings. There's only 3 of us that are usually there. And if you ever want to join, we're open to more members, but only Christians, please. But the one of the things we do expository Bible study. We're working on Romans. We're almost done with Romans, and we're going to probably do Nehemiah next. But the same reason, we don't want to skip stuff. We don't want to skip over the important stuff. Because when you read verse 9, or you read chapter 9, you read verse 1, followed by verse 2, it kind of makes sense. It totally makes sense. But nobody bothers to read it in sequence. No, these days, everybody just wants to read a verse here and a verse there to put together a message. It says the alternate interpretation was in the $10 super chat that said Jesus was like David Koresh, like the apocalyptic prophet. Well, obviously that's crazy. I think we need to show is difference, respect and esteem due to a superior or an elder. Respect and esteem due to a superior or an elder. Well, are you talking about to things like the president and stuff? I mean, you should respect the president because he's the freaking president. Now, you could say that he's a superior. Regardless of how old you are, he's the president. So if you're a United States citizen, he is superior to all in this country. Jason says, I have a bad habit of calling Justin Trudeau Trudy. His title includes Right Honorable, whether I like it or not. And I know that could be tough, man. I get it. I don't know anything about the politics of Canada. Very little at least, except for some of the stuff you told me. And I get it. It can be very tough when you don't like the guy in office. But that's when it's even more important. And I've struggled with it in the past. Believe me, I've said some horrible things about past presidents. Mostly, like the worst, I was horrible about Bill Clinton. I was absolutely horrible about Bill Clinton back in the day. I was nice to George Bush, but I voted for George Bush. And so I was pretty rough on Barack Obama at points.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Is that what he meant by, see, need some Greek?
Is that what he meant by see? Not and well, he said that some of you will see they saw him. I mean, I'm not sure what it needs. You don't need any fancy interpretation skills for that. He says some of you will see. And they saw. He demonstrated to them the power of the kingdom. He said, some of you will, in fact, see. And then he took 3 of them up to the mountain. His inner circle, if you will. It's not a requirement to refer to our ex-president as Mr. President. The majority of people practice this out of respect. I wasn't sure on that, Average Am, so... But you're a limey, so are you sure about that? Prove to me you love your children. They're not dead. Salty and Professor, is it okay let's see, is it okay to call Trump how he wants to be called? Yeah, if President Trump or former President Trump or whatever prefers to be called Don, then that's fine. Like if you meet him and he says, oh, call me Don, I don't have a problem with that, right? Or whatever he wants to be called. That's respectful as well. Like if I say, if you meet me and you call me Mr. Trekker and I say, oh, no, call me Salty, that's fine. But you should always be respectful when you first meet someone, right? So if I'm meeting, you for the first time, Alex, I would say Mr. Bogey, right? And if you said, well, you can call me Alex, then I would call you Alex. But I wouldn't just start out saying, hey, Alex. Unfortunately, in society today, we're very informal and very disrespectful. We just want, hey, Alex, can I call you Al? That's not okay. I went to, I can't remember where it was, but I went to some business and it was like, what's your name? It's Mike, Michael Crawford. Oh, can I call you Mike? No. You can call me Mr. Crawford, And Professor Brainy Speck says, we are all brains in jars hooked to a computer. You're probably right. Andy Tiger says, when you wanted to talk about Mark 9, thought you meant BSG Vipers. Oh, those are beautiful. Although Mark 9, we haven't seen Mark 9 yet. I just love the original Mark 1s. They are beautiful. Those were just so well designed. Even when I was a kid, I was like, dang, they made a fighter that looked better than the X-Wing. If Jesus were alive today, would he drink Coke or Pepsi? That's interesting. What he would do is he would get Coke and then turn it into Pepsi. I don't know. Dollar says, Hebrew to English, I just don't see how exactly would transfer cleanly. Certain words be misinterpreted. Remember when I used lie, made fun of instead of blasphemy change? Well, that's because you didn't know how to spell blasphemy. And lie made fun of is not like if you're going to say blasphemy and you were trying to, and you couldn't think of you could say speak against. That's what blasphemy means. So that's not, like lie / made fun of is not a good interpretation of blasphemy. If you replace blasphemy with lie or made fun of, then that's a very poor interpretation. However, if you replace the word blasphemy with speak against, that's a proper interpretation. All that being said, that's why we have 750 different interpretations of the Bible. And there's a few ways to study a particular passage, especially if there's a passage you have questions about, Valor. One thing that you do is number one, and the best thing, and I highly recommend this website. There's a website called Bible Gateway. It is 100% free. And let me bring it up for you because I actually have it on one of my monitors right now. Screen capture, smart selection. All right, so this is Bible Gateway, a part of it right here. So this is where I was looking at Mark 9. All right, and you see it's Mark 9, Holman Christian Standard Bible. And so right here it says, okay, he then said to them, I assure you, there is some standing here that will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God come in power. Now, I want to make sure, is that really the best translation, you know? And so, look, I can look at almost every translation there is. Okay? So we want to go 21st century King James Version. And he said unto them, verily I say to you, that there are some of them that stand here who shall not taste death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Okay, you know. And so let's and so you can go through pretty much every translation available. Now, some translations are, and this is something that's kind of interesting about translations. There are translations that are word for word. There are translations that are phrase by phrase. And so this is the Young's literal translation is a good one to take a look at sometimes if you want to make sure that the words are what you think they are. So Young's literal is a word for word translation. So it says, and he said to them, verily I say to you, there are certain of those standing here who may not taste death till they see the reign of God having come in power. And so that just basically takes each individual word that's written in Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic and translates it as that word. But sometimes the phraseology doesn't make sense. Sometimes the sentence structure doesn't make sense because it's a word for word translation. And certain, like word order doesn't always make sense because of the sentence structure of those languages compared to English. And so we're like, huh? Scratching your head. And that's why we start looking at some of the newer or the more user-friendly translations to try and understand it. So you start looking through all these different translations to try and glean, if you will, to make sure that, okay, I'm getting a good idea of what this is saying. These are all saying that some of the people that are here will see the reign of God coming in power before they die. That's basically, and so like if you were doing a paraphrase Bible, which paraphrase Bibles are Bibles that don't even try to construct it the way it was originally written, but just try to rewrite the Bible and get the general meaning right. You might say something like, if I was to rewrite 9:1 here, I would say something to the effect of, some of you here will not die before you see the power of God, or something like that, And so, but that's how, and in fact, let's see, I wonder what the Message says on, I think, is the Message a paraphrase? I'm trying to remember. I think, let's see, go to the Message. Oh, wrong one. We'll just, there we go. Then he drove it home. He drove it home by saying, this isn't a pie. Wow, they really went crazy with this. This isn't pie in the sky and by. Some of you who are standing here are going to see it happen. See the kingdom of God arrive in full force. That's kind of a weird way to phrase it. They took it way too far. So the Message is not my favorite translation, to be honest, but that's an interesting one. All right, so that's one way you can do it, Valerie. You can actually, if you look at these different translations, it makes it so that you can then you can get a good idea of it without having to look into Greek and Hebrew. When you start getting into Greek and Hebrew, it becomes very difficult for people, which is understandable because Greek and Hebrew are difficult languages. And so, but if you start looking at all the various English translations, you can usually get a good idea. That's a good place to start with your studies. Jay says, even when our pastor does jump around, he always points out the context. Well, that's good. I still prefer, expository teaching, but I understand expository teaching is extraordinarily rare. Because honestly, you got to deal with some ugly stuff. If you're doing it like you you want a real challenge, try going through the book of Romans without flinching. Valor says, by using wrong words, change the meaning of the comment. You're right, but the problem is that, and I'm sorry I didn't see there was a second part to that, but going back to what you were saying, as far as blasphemy, you didn't, when you said lie made fun of, that's not at all what blasphemy means. That's not even, I mean, like if I say, well, yeah, but if I decide to replace the word book with popcorn, that's a bad translation, right? But nobody would replace the word book with popcorn. They might replace the word book with manuscript or something like that, but they're not going to replace it with popcorn. And that's kind of what you did there. People don't know that chapters and verses are there for easy search, not that each verse is in context on its own. That's a good point, Jason. Yeah, there were no chapters and verses in the originals. That was all added just for reference purposes. No, the chapters and verses are all after the fact. The book of Revelation is talking about the prostitute of Babylon, the mother of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is the son of Satan. That seems a little random, but okay. Maybe as a comment to something I said earlier. Robert says, many books have been removed from the Bible that once were in the Bible, such as the book of Maccabees that gives the approval to overthrow ungodly leaders. Robert, I know that you have some odd beliefs, but the books that have been removed from the Bible were never in the Bible. I'm sorry, that's just a false teaching. There were a lot of people say, oh, well, this was removed from the Bible because it was not canonized. It was not in the Bible. Until the canonization of the Bible, it was not in the Bible. But, well, what about the Gospel of Thomas? There's a lot of interesting books that were removed from the Bible that say a lot of interesting things, like there's actually a gospel that says that Jesus was a serial killer. No joke. Yeah, I'm sure that was legit. Jay says, LOL on the not dead. That comment for me was back to proving that a thing or place exists for those that can't see a thing. That comment for me goes back to the proving a thing or a place exists for those that can't see a thing. I get it. Use the salty pronoun or I get triggered. Yes, absolutely. I assume Jesus meant by see, enter the kingdom. Well, he said, you'll see. Maybe it's as simple as you'll see. I think sometimes we try to read too deeply into something. Sometimes when the word, when it says you're going to see something, it just means you're going to see something. If I say I'm going to show you something, it just means I'm going to show you something. Doesn't mean I'm going to take you here and give you a guided tour. It might mean, hey, I'm going to show you something. Look at that. We assume familiarity where none exists. I'm just old enough to have been taught to refer to people as Mr. or Mrs. or Miss until allowed otherwise. Absolutely. Sir, ma'am, Mr., Mrs., Miss. Absolutely. I meant we can call Trump real president. No. That is completely inappropriate. And in fact, that is disrespectful to President Biden, and it is borderline treasonous. And so I will say that, Alex, 100%. When you start saying, and I said this about the Democrats as well, and I will say the Republicans do it with Biden right now. The Democrats did it the Republicans are doing it with Biden, and they did it with Obama. The Democrats did it with Trump and with Bush. All right. You start saying, that's not my president. You start saying, oh, Trump is the real president. You still bitch and moan, sorry for my language, about how the election was stolen. You're talking treason. Get it out of your system, buddy. The election is effing over. It is September, dude. Get over it. I understand you don't like it. It's over. Stop talking treason. Indy's heading out to breakfast. Have a good one. Fly thinks that religion is blasphemy. Well, blasphemy against what? Do you understand what blasphemy means? I mean, to say something is blasphemy, you have to have something that it's blasphemy against. Let's see. I think Jesus would be more of a tea person. That's a good question. I mean, we know Jesus liked wine, and 5 points that out. As far as like Coke or Pepsi, you're saying, he like tea. I don't know. I think he's more a Mountain Dew guy. Always have Strong's Concordance. I have a Strong's Concordance. Oh, actually, let's see. Right here, I have Zonderman's Concordance. This is a good one. And yeah, you can see I got all the Post-its in here for stuff that I've been looking up. But yeah, having an exhaustive concordance handy at all times is really, really good if you want to get into a deep word study. Because what you do with a concordance, for those that don't know, is, and I don't know where my Strong's is. It must be upstairs still. But if you, a concordance basically is an exhaustive listing of every word that's in the Bible and what its Greek and or Hebrew word is. So like this concordance is broken into, there's the Hebrew section and the Greek section, and then what its literal Greek Hebrew translation is based on the scholarship. So, and all the possible translations of the word. So not just what the translators put it for in this particular context, but every possible meaning of the word. Because, some words do have multiple meanings. Just like in modern language, words have multiple meanings. And so that way you can actually, if you want to do what's called a word study, you might take a verse and say, okay, let's look at the word 6 in this verse. And then we go and we look up the word and we see 6. Okay. And it literally just says it is the number 6. Okay. So that one's easy. We got that one. All right. So the next one says days. All right. So let's go in and it says, okay, this can mean either this, or this. Okay. So we write that down. All right. And then we just go through the whole thing. And that way we can make sure that we know every possible interpretation and see if anything makes sense other than what we see in the actual translations. And generally speaking, what we're going to find is that most alternate translations make no sense. There's very few areas where you could make it make sense other than what they already do. Average in Greek, hora, to see, experience firsthand, used 272 times the New Testament to denote witnessing with one's own eyes. There you go. 5 says, King James, not the best translation. Well, it's actually, I will say this, 5, it's actually a very good translation for its day. And so it is actually a very good translation. The problem is that it's a very difficult to read translation to the modern reader. And so because of the fact that it's written in very flowery language, and even then flowery language for someone in the 15th century. So, Johnny says, did you know that the NIV skips verses? No, it does not. That is another myth that people like to throw in because they say, but wait, it doesn't have this. And they'll say, because the King James has this, but the NIV doesn't. The NIV is from Satan because they edited this out. They got rid of it to make it for Satan. No. They edited it out because of what was in the later manuscripts that came along after the King James was published. That the later manuscripts indicated that certain verses that may have been in the King James weren't actually accurate. And I understand that some people don't like that because they're saying, but wait, the King James Bible, that's the real Bible. Not, look, even if, and this is the stupid thing about all those arguments. None of the verses in question change the meaning of anything. If you look at the overall message of the Bible, none of the verses we're talking about change a darn thing. It genuinely does not matter. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending the King James nor attacking it, and I'm not defending the NIV nor attacking it. Both of them have their strengths. Both of them have their weaknesses, and neither of them are my favorite translation. The Holman is my favorite translation currently. But I also tend to use a plethora of translations when I'm doing a serious study on something. And that's why. And because of the fact that there are differences, and the differences, the so-called missing verses is, like I said, mainly because there are differences in the manuscripts. And the differences in the manuscripts is a good thing. I know people think, oh, well, look at all these variants. That proves that it's inaccurate. No, it actually proves that it is accurate. If everything was exactly the same, what that proves is conspiracy. Because it's not possible to have everything exactly the same. And you can talk to historians and how that works, but it's actually true. Before you and the wife's pepper buy a new vehicle, you should check out our Scotty Kilmer and the Car Wizard here on YouTube. Both are mechanics. I have a list of vehicles to avoid. Oh, check it out. Thank you, Robert. Jason says, I would lean way more on Car Wizard than Scotty. Scotty seems to flip and flop around without context sometimes. What I generally do, I look around, just like with Bible translations, I'll look at a lot of different reviews of stuff. I'll be honest, the vehicle I'm leaning towards right now would be the Ford Explorer, is what we would like to get. But we'll see. Jason says, the controversy in some translations comes from the issue of Textus Receptus versus Alexandrian text. Well, and that's the problem. There's a lot of people get all worked up over some of this stuff. And here is the funny thing. You grab a King James, you grab an NIV, you grab a Holman, you grab an NESV, you just grab a dozen random Bibles that aren't fringe Bibles, right? That aren't, like, when I say fringe, you know what I'm talking about, groups like Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. You grab a dozen random Bibles, you read them cover to cover, you're going to get the same message. And the frustrating thing to me is that people get into these deep-seated fights over whether or not this word, like one word, should be in a verse. Oh, they cut out the word Lord from this verse, therefore they hate God. Or, well, maybe it's just because the word Lord wasn't in some of the manuscripts that they used to translate this. So what? If the message is the same, so what? It doesn't mean they hate God, and it doesn't mean, and you know what? They shouldn't be using the King James Bible to translate another Bible. It doesn't work that way. Because if they did, then they would. Then the critics of the Bible, they'll say, "Oh, you have a translation of a translation of a translation." They'd be accurate, but they're not accurate when they. That's one of the critiques of the Bible that I can't stand, is when people say, "Oh, well, you're just reading a translation of a translation of a translation of a book that's thousands of years old." No, I am reading a translation. But I'm not reading a translation of a translation of a translation. It's just a translation. And the problem is that if a new Bible translation had to be judged by its comparison to another translation, then that critique would be correct. Jason says, well, it's about time for church. Have a good day if I don't see you around later. All right, Jason, have a good time. And Tristan says, I'm so glad the Canadian election is almost over. 5 weeks is a long time. It's been hard to keep a respectful attitude towards the party leaders. Well, I'm glad I don't know anything about your elections and politics, because if it's anything as bad as American elections and politics, I'd probably be going crazy, because I can't. Man, our election was rough this last time. I'm so glad it's over. I mean, genuinely just glad it's over. All right, guys. So Nalfi says, have to go, but when do you do that superhero night with Matthew? I have a suggestion. If you have a HBO Max, we just added 80s Supergirl movie. Ah, dang. Well, we're not doing Supergirl, but that's actually a good one for the future. I'll have to download it. And but for right now, we already got this Friday's already set up. But guys, don't forget to stay salty, and thank you for hanging out with me. It was for these last couple hours. It was a lot of fun. I think we got a lot of good stuff out there. Honestly, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of these Sunday morning live streams, because I certainly love hanging out with you guys and talking about this stuff. This to me is what it's all about. The deep dive into this stuff. After we move, after the dust settles, I'll be completely honest. Yeah, my coffee, unfortunately, is pretty much gone. One thing I'll tell you, Average App, no joke. Since I'll just kind of kick back for a minute. But one thing that I plan on doing after we move, because I'm going to be able to, when we get our house, I'm going to set up a room just for streaming, right? That's all I'm going to do is, basically hang out with you guys. And so in that room, like here, I have one of those Keurig coffee machines. It's over there on the other side of the room. But I'll set it up so that it'll be like right next to me. So that, like, or actually probably over here. Like, I have my candle here, which you can't see because I have my, all right, there we go. So I have my candle here. So if I put a couple of shelves here and I build it out properly, I could put a Keurig machine right here, so that when my coffee runs low, I could just put my coffee cup there, make another cup of coffee, right? It's basically set it up so that for this kind of stuff, I'll be all set. And Alex puts $1. I will get over it when Arizona audit is published on the 27th. What, dude? It doesn't. You know what? Even if let me tell you, hypothetically, and of course, Average Adam yells boobs. Even if the Arizona audit comes up that 100% of Arizona votes went to Trump, wouldn't overturn the election. Still wouldn't matter.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
We'll get over it when AZ audit is published on 27th.
Would not matter. Won't matter one bit. But we'll see what they say. But it's not going to matter. What are you going to do, riot? I mean, seriously, what are people going to do? And if they do riot, boy, I mean, honestly, like what happened on January 6th is a freaking joke. It just, that was horrible. Anyway, back to the fun stuff. So yeah, when we move, I plan on building a room. Unfortunately, I'll be unable to live stream for probably at least a couple of weeks. At least live stream properly. I don't know how we're going to do it, but once we set up the room, I'll build some shelves. Well, I'll try to build some shelves. It's going to be a fun time, I'll tell you, with the way what a physical wreck I am. But put the Keurig machine, everything within arm's reach, so that I can, be able to do the live stream and make more coffee if I need to. I have a mini fridge over there. Probably move that over here so I can reach it. Stuff like that. And just basically make it everything closer. That's the goal. As far as, since if I'm going to have, my career, if you will, is going to be a couple of things. What I'm planning on doing, honestly, is if my career is switching to, I'm going to be on Social Security and for the foreseeable future, then I'm going to try to take advantage of that. And when I say take advantage of that, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I'm going to use what time I have left on this earth to reach as many people as I can and do as much good as I can. And Odd Librarian out's heading to church. All right, have a good one. I will see you on Wednesday. Let's see. And Average says, you can't go offline for 2 weeks. If you do that, you have to start being I'll start being a jerk to my next door neighbors. All right, well, I'll do my best to not go offline for much, for as little time as I can. But, so what I want to do is once we get things moved, so I'll have the live stream layer set up, and then, and I've been starting to ride again my trike, and I'm actually going to put a video out. I've done four or five rides already. I'm not riding very far. It's very difficult for me. I'm going to do a ride after, well, if it's not raining, because the weather's been a little rainy lately. But I'm going to try to ride today, if I can. And so far, I've done the rides ranging from 2 to 3.5 miles. Now, that's not very much. I mean, because honestly, like, when Matthew rode that, he did the Hotter Than Hell, that was a 100-mile ride. And in the past, I could have ridden for 20, 30, 40 miles without even breaking a sweat. Now, riding 3 miles is a massive undertaking because of the pain and all that. But I want to, basically continue to push myself. If I can get to where I'm riding more, I'm going to try to participate in events to try and raise awareness for MS, since I'm going to be living with it for the rest of my life. And I'll be doing that and then doing live streams with you guys. And that will basically be my career. And then, the missus thinks I should get a Chihuahua because I can't, you don't have to walk them. And so, let's see. Alex says, I don't want it overturned, just want the truth for posterity. No, you want to poison the well. You see, if you don't want to overturn the election, then there's no point. You're basically saying, I just won't, I just hate the current president. I will do everything I can to undermine his authority. Wrong answer. I want the current president. You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't vote for the current president, but I want him to be as successful as he can be. And to sit there and here we are, freaking 8 months into his administration, and we're still fighting him over the election. We got better things to do, Alex. We got better things to do. We're wasting a freaking year over fighting over the dang election. By the time, and people are dragging this on, by the time you guys finish fighting over the election, the next election will be starting. So no, thank you. I'm sorry. I don't have any respect for anybody who's into this, that's into this whole, I'm done with it. The election ended months ago. And people need to stop trying to dig it up and keep it going, because there's no reason for it. And if you call yourself a Christian, I'm sorry, then you absolutely need to stop. Average Jeff says, when you said you'd be riding your trike, I got mental images of The Shining. Yeah, it's not a big wheel, but I understand. I actually have a little thing on it with the camera so I could record some of it. I've made some live streams of it. Here, I'll even show you guys. Let me see if I can bring up one of them. Let's see. Hold on. And if we go to YouTube Studio, come on. And content. And live. All right. So we got, let's bring up ride number 3. All right. And add screen monitor. There we go. So this is one of the, I was a little wobbly, but that's just because the camera's mounted to the front of, and you see it moving really slow here. But this is this is the area which I live. That's ugly right there. Weird. Really? It only goes up to 720? Okay. Probably because I'm streaming it from my phone. Anyway, but this is, yeah, this was my, one of my rides. So I actually did that. So I just wanted on the record that I'm actually trying to ride the best of my ability. Let's see. Stanley thinks I should get a hairless cat. No, those things are nasty. Alex says, if you care, before January 6th, the plan was to hold a people's inauguration for Trump if the election was not overturned, was not going to participate. Well, yeah, that didn't go over so well. Johnny says, do you want Biden's policies to be successful? I want this country to be successful. I don't agree with Biden's policies. It's not about his policies. But I do, I pray for Biden. I pray that ultimately God's plan will come to fruition, even if I don't like what's going on right now. And I think that Christians need to shut up. And stop trying to badmouth the President of the United States and instead pray for him, and not pray for him with an asterisk. Okay? Just pray for him. And I'm sorry, but we need to stop trying to badmouth the president. Period. Johnny says, are you pro-life? No, I'm anti-choice. And I'm absolutely serious about that. I'm not pro-life. I am not pro-choice. I am anti-choice. I do not believe that abortion is a political issue, and I'm so sick of abortion being a political issue. Abortion is a medical issue. It should be treated as a medical issue. The only reason it's a political issue is because it's a popular one for people to argue about. And it shouldn't be at all. The only people that should be discussing abortion are doctors. And the only people that have that should be making a decision on abortion are doctors. So no, I do not believe that, I do believe that there are cases where abortion is medically necessary, and that's when abortions should be performed. No other, No other case. However, what we've done is we've taken abortion out of the medical arena and we've turned it into a political issue. So it's no longer up to the doctor. Now it's a casual choice that, oh, it's about women's rights or it's about the rights of the unborn. No, it's a medical decision. But we've taken that away. We've forgotten what abortion is. So, no, I'm anti-choice. Searcher says, 100% agree with you on that, Salty. Best thing to do is move on and get ready for the next one. Absolutely. Can we stop trying to poison the well? Because you know what? We poison the well and we can't drink from it in 4 years. Just saying, you know, and I know I've said this. My big conspiracy theory is that Donald Trump was trying to destroy the Republican Party from within, and he's doing it. And the only reason I know it's just a conspiracy theory, it's probably not true, but the idea there is that because Donald Trump was a Democrat, and a lot of people don't, you know, they pretend that he's this crazy conservative. He's not. He was, you know, Clintons were his best friends a few years ago. He was a Democrat for most of his life. Then all of a sudden he becomes a Republican, starts saying, I am the most conservative person ever. I am the most pro-life person ever. You know, even though a few years ago, I'm the most pro-choice person ever. You know, that's what Donald Trump does. He flip-flopped on everything. Right. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, yeah, I'm the most Republican ever, even though, you know, 10 years ago, I'm the most Democratic Democrat ever. And so, and everybody swallows it. All these people are just eating it up. They think that it's true. They actually believe him, which is amazing to me. And I'm sorry to anybody in the chat that's a Trump supporter or whatever, and I'm not trying to be offensive to you, but it blows my mind that you believe him. It absolutely blows my mind that you believe him, because if you look at his record, are you blind? He was literally the Clintons' best friend. And then all of a sudden, oh, those Clintons, yeah, they're bad. They're really bad. Oh, yeah, I'm not the, oh, yeah, I'm the opposite of them. And so people believe that he is now the opposite of what he was a few years ago. Okay, fine. And that, and he's radicalizing the Republican Party to the point where people are defending taking the Capitol by force and saying, oh no, it wasn't really that bad. Oh, only one person died. It wasn't that bad. It was really just, it was just peaceful protesting. Oh, sure, some idiot with buffalo horns was parading around, you know, writing death threats to Nancy Pelosi and stealing the podium, but they were just peaceful protests. And then the sickest thing of all, as a Christian, was these idiots storm the Capitol, go to the Senate floor, and start praying. Ugh. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That is blasphemy. Alex says, I just want the future for elections to be secured. No one can question the results in the future. Yeah, good effing luck. You know what this is going to do? All that's going to happen is in the next election, everybody's going to accuse everybody of cheating. It just happens, dude. It's not you do understand that there is no federal standard for how to secure your elections. There's no standard. Every state does it differently. And because of that, there's always going to be accusations of cheating. There was accusation, you know, do you not remember 2000? Oh my gosh, it was insane. Of course, the shoe was on the other foot, so we all forget about it because it was George Bush that supposedly cheated. And I kept hearing all my Democratic friends, oh, there were bags of ballots that were thrown away. All this stupid crap about how George Bush stole the election and all these ballots that didn't get counted. It was the same crap that we're hearing now. Whenever we have a close election, someone stole it. Because, God forbid, we should just have a close election. Taking off, have a good one. All right, my friend, see you Wednesday. Johnny says, abortion painfully or rips apart an innocent baby. You don't need to say graphic things about it. I understand that it's not a good thing, but you do not have to say stuff like that because, first of all, the only reason to say that is to offend people. I'm not interested in offending people. I sometimes I am, but I'm not. That's not the purpose of a debate. If I want to say, oh, well, you just want to rip to shreds babies, what kind of an argument is that? Do you really think that pro-choice people are sitting there going, oh, I can't wait to rip babies to shreds? Come on. And don't get me wrong, and your name is Johnny Shredder. But you know what I'm saying. Don't say things like that. You're not advancing your cause at all. Because people that are pro-life are going to be like, yeah. People that are pro-choice are like, ugh. And you accomplish nothing. If you want to have a discussion on abortion, that is the very last thing you should ever say. If you want to have a conversation on abortion, start talking about, well, what is abortion really about? And like I said, in my opinion, we should be talking about, is it a medical procedure or a political right? If it's a medical procedure, why are we talking about it in the political realm? And then, those kind of questions are much more interesting and much more effective than abortion rips apart an innocent baby. And I'm sorry, Johnny, I'm not trying to be mean, but you want to be careful about that stuff. But then you say you agree with me. Average Dev says, purely medical question. Do you think Biden has the physical and mental capacity to successfully endure an 8-year term? I do not know. But here's the problem with all that. Because first of all, as an armchair quarterback, it's really easy to say, well, Biden stutters and stammers and he messes up. You know what? A lot of people said the same thing about George Bush. A lot of people said that about Ronald Reagan, who, by the way, was suffering from Alzheimer's. But you know what? He effectively completed his 8 years. But people say that about presidents all the time. And I don't know. I'm not his doctor. I don't know what his true physical and mental capacity is. So just because the guy stumbles over his words doesn't tell me that he's incapable, because George Bush stumbled over his words. Donald Trump said word salad every day. And I'm sorry to Trump supporters, half of the sentences coming out of Donald Trump's mouth made no effing sense whatsoever. But, so what? People loved him. I'm not saying he was mentally incompetent. I think Trump was very shrewd and very, very intelligent. But, half of the sentences he said made no sense. That was his style. He did that on purpose. He did that to confuse people intentionally. Johnny says Trump mostly did what he said he would do. I'm not accusing him of lying. I'm just, except for the fact that I'm just saying he flip-flopped on everything. He changed his position on everything. Trump told people to be respectful and to go home. Of course he did. Wink, wink. That's the problem. Is that I know what it's like, yeah, we're going to go march on the Capitol. Nicely. We're going to go storm the White House. Nicely. That's that kind of crap. Whatever. And, don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming Trump for everything that happened. However, he also didn't do what he should have done to stop it. It was a disgrace what happened. Yeah. Let's see. Valor says Trump told the people to be. I already read that. Let's see. Man, I just realized I got like 2 different chats running. Average said the hanging chads. Oh man, I had nightmares about hanging chads. Ugh.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
How can Trump be a Democrat agent, local GOP triple in size because of him? The old Republicans are unhappy to have all the Trumpers outvote them.
Exactly. You just said it. And thank you for the $5, Alex. But you actually just said it. What he's doing, and this is what fits my evil conspiracy theory, is that so he purposely, Trump appeals to the lowest common denominator. And I'm sorry, he does. He absolutely, he appeals to the most radical, the most base instinct, angry people out there. And so he gets these people into the party. He gets them to outvote the old Republicans. The entire Republican Party becomes radicalized and collapses. That's what he's trying to do. Because guess what happens to the Republican Party as it becomes more and more radical? Your mainstream Republicans jump ship. And where do they go? They either go to one of the third parties, like people like myself that have gone mostly to groups like the Libertarians, or they end up going to the Democrats. People that are middle of the road, they'll go to the Democrats. And that's happened before, where people switch from Democrat to Republican and Republican to Democrat, and because they're afraid of the third parties. Johnny says, what I said about abortion is true, pal. I don't think the president during World War II loved the idea of nuking thousands or millions of people. It still happened. I didn't say it was a lie, Johnny. I said it's unhelpful. I think you missed the point. I'm not accusing you of saying something that is untrue. I'm saying that if you're going to argue with someone about abortion, telling them that it rips a baby apart is going to shut down the argument. You make zero progress with a person by saying that. It doesn't help. And if you want to further your cause, if your goal is to try and prevent abortions, simply yelling things at the other person that offends them and shuts it down doesn't help. All that does is reinforce their resolve. That's not what I want to do. I'm not interested in yelling at people and just causing a scene. I'm interested in making real progress. I'm interested in actually getting people to change their mind. And I'm not going to get them to change their mind by yelling at them about ripping babies apart. Just like you're not going to convince people to be Christians by yelling at people and telling them they're going to go to hell, right? So you need to approach them with rationality, with reason, and with genuine conversation. If you can't do that, then you're not going to make any progress. And if you don't make any progress, then abortion is not going to be stopped. Oh, sure, you're going to get the occasional restriction on abortion like in Texas, but then you're going to get pushback on abortion in states like California. And you're just going to have stuff going back and forth, just like we've had. You're not going to get any real change to where abortion can go back to being a medical procedure until we start having real conversations about it, which we're not willing to do because we just want to yell bumper sticker slogans at people. Let's see. Johnny says, I just got off a long shift to work, so I don't express my thoughts completely, oh, no, it's not about expressing your thoughts completely correct. My point there is I just want to make sure that you are better equipped so that the next time if you're talking to a friend or a coworker or whatever, and casual conversation who's pro-choice, I want you to be better equipped to have that conversation so that you can say, hey, have you considered this? You know, rather than, hey, did you know that, you know, they rip the arms out of the sockets of a baby, you know, and they're going to be like, oh, F you, man. You know, you're just trying to gross me out to get me to, you know, and so instead you say, hey, have you ever stopped to consider that abortion is just a medical procedure? You know, do you go into the doctor and say, hey, will you remove my kidney? Does anybody ever do that and just say, hey, you know what? Get rid of this kidney for me, will you? Or does the doctor determine you need that kidney taken out? Who chooses to remove your kidney? So you give consent. You don't choose. So I think that's where, I guess that's where I'll say I'm pro consent. Ha ha! That's my position. I'm not anti-choice anymore. I'm pro consent. Ha ha! There's my official abortion position from now on. Pro consent. So thank you, Johnny Shredder, for helping me come up with my new position. So Valor says he never said anything. We've seen. He never said to do anything we've seen on the 6th. I didn't say he did. You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say he said, "Hey guys, you know, I want you to go into the White House and steal the podium and threaten Nancy Pelosi." Those were his followers. But he certainly did not do what he should have to stop it. I mean, the minute it started, he should have been immediately trying to stop it. He waited a long time. But he could have put an end to it. He could have absolutely stopped it. But he didn't. And he didn't, you know, that was his choice. You know, but I'm sorry, what happened on the 6th was disgusting. I'm not, whatever, you know, whatever you want to say, some people want to defend it, some people want to attack it. I think it was disgusting. And I think it was disgusting because they did it in the name of God. The people that were besieging the Capitol are already attacking a mile away when he was giving his speech. I'm not, you know, guys, come on. It's already been confirmed Black Lives Matter and yeah, okay, dude, whatever. It was not Black Lives Matter that did it. That's a, you know, that I'm sorry, that is such a load of crap. If that's, you know, then it was Trump supporters that were rioting in the streets after, you know, during the riots. That was all Trump supporters. Did you know that? Because you know what? During those Black Lives Matter demonstrations, and this is true, Lancer, and this is what pisses me off. You want to sit there and say it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa that did it, which is a bunch of BS. But you know what is true is during the riots, mostly white people were the ones causing trouble. But everybody wants to say, oh, those Black Lives Matter. All right. Johnny says, good point. Never said anything about yelling. I understand. But, you know, when you say things like that, it kind of comes across as that's something that people would yell at each other. The most radical group is the left. No. Let me stop you right there. That's the problem. We're sitting there saying, oh, they're the bad ones. We're the good ones. Wrong answer. Over 60 people died in 2 months' time. Antifa, Black Lives Matter. You see, you just want to say how bad they are. Lancer, they are not the only bad ones. You are too. I'm sorry. We are, you know, it doesn't matter what, as soon as you start saying us and them, you are wrong. We are the problem. It's not us and them. United we stand, divided we fall. We are divided like hell right now. And we need to stop. And as much as you're pointing at them, that's the problem. You want to blame them for all the problems? That's the problem. You want to sit there and say Antifa and Black Lives Matter is the cause of every problem in this country? You're full of crap right now. Because I'm sorry, but Donald Trump did in fact encourage a lot of the problems that we have. And yet everybody wants to say how he is just the savior. Sorry, he's not. You know, and it's just, you know, it's sickening to me that everybody wants to sit there and blame one side like the other side is just so pure and so wonderful. Oh, well, I'm not saying we're perfect. They're just way worse. No, really, they're not. Both sides are full of crap. And you know what? Antifa and Black Lives Matter did not storm the freaking Capitol. Literally got messages from the Trump campaign. Are you ready to occupy D.C. by force if necessary? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Oh, well, I guess that must have been Black Lives Matter. Like I said yesterday, General Milley confirmed that he told the Chinese counterparts they wouldn't allow Trump to attack them. Biden and lots of the left openly supported what he did. Well, Lancer, as far as General Milley, the General Milley thing, now I haven't read up on it or anything. I know that Deej did a video on it while riding his tractor. If he actually did say that, then he needs to be brought up on charges. I mean, that's just disgusting. But that has nothing to do with what we were talking about. Trump won because many of them got tired of being attacked by woke people. Woke verb alert to injustice society. Well, now Trump won because he was a bully. He bullied his way to the White House, and but then honestly, I think people just saw him for what he was and then didn't vote for him again. But Trump increased the size of the party, so losing the old Republicans compensated twofold. Yeah, compensated too much that he lost. Alex, you know what? The Republican Party is collapsing and you're celebrating. You are the perfect example of why his strategy is working if my conspiracy theory is correct. You are a shining example of why his strategy is perfect. You can't be more hostile to America than that, protecting China or backing people protecting China. I'm not defending that general. You're acting like I'm defending that general. Lancer, you must be confusing me with somebody else. Don't disrespect RG3 Trekker. And then Valor says, saying he could have stopped it is like saying you could tell someone from the Salty Trekker channel family who's attacking people to stop, but they don't. Does that make it your fault? There's a big difference. First of all, Valor, I'm not the president of the United States, but if I was the leader of a huge movement, and every time I said something, let's say that, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say that, I have a large YouTube channel and I'll just call it, Nerd Psychic, to use a nice subtle name. So I'm Nerd Psychic. And I have, say, 100,000 subscribers or 200,000 subscribers. And I don't, and I'm sitting there talking about crap. And, I decide to talk about how I don't particularly care for this guy called Spicy Trekker. And I say, you know what, that Spicy Trekker guy, I don't like him. He's kind of a jerk. And all of a sudden, Spicy Trekker, because I say that, because of my 200,000 subs, Spicy Trekker starts getting tons and tons of death threats and hate mail, and all of his videos start getting false flagged, and he just starts getting all sorts of hate. It would then be my assuming I find out about that, it would then be my responsibility, my absolute responsibility to say, no, guys, that's not okay. All right. Do not do that. period. And in fact, and what you should do, and what I would take another step further and say, you need to go back and apologize to Spicy Trekker for what you did. All right. Now, that would be, now and then if I talked about Spicy Trekker again, it shouldn't repeat itself, right? And if it did repeat itself, then I would talk to them again, because you need to, you know what, if you are a leader of any kind, yes, you have to accept some responsibility for what your followers do. It's just like, if I tell people, hey, I want everybody to go to Bird of Prey 5's channel and tell them that, you know, I want some deep fried bird for dinner, and everybody does it, it's on me. That's my responsibility, right? So now when Bird starts getting all sorts of comments saying they want deep fried bird for dinner, and Bird's like, dude, why are you telling people to say that? That's so wrong. I'll be like, you know, that's me. That's my responsibility. I'm a leader. That's what being a leader means. And Donald Trump is the leader of this country. So yes, he is responsible. And yes, he should have taken every step possible to stop them, and he didn't. He sat back and he watched it happen, when he should have immediately, like the moment it started, he should have been, you know, the first thing happened on Twitter, stop immediately, stop what you're doing, because you know they were all on Twitter, right? Half of them were live streaming. He should have gotten every armed person he could to the White House, or to the Capitol building. He should have done everything in his power to make it end immediately. But he didn't. Oh, sure, a couple hours later he said something about how it wasn't good. That's not taking responsibility. Sorry, he didn't. But yes, if you are in a leadership position, you do have, sometimes you have to accept responsibility for things that you can't totally control. And if you don't like that, don't put yourself in a leadership position, because that's an uncomfortable feeling. But that's part of being a leader. And Trump knows it. He knows it. He's been a leader his whole life. And Lancer's trying to go on saying the BLM and Antifa are behind January 6th, which I'm sorry, Lancer, it's a load of crap. That, you know, I'm sorry if it's, yeah. At least Trump was better president than some of the presidents we had in the 18th and 19th century, because they're total hypocritical buttholes who owned other human beings. Well, I will say this. I'm, you know, obviously not a big fan of slavery. So, yeah, I'll grant you. I'm not saying Trump is the worst president that ever sat in the office. I'm not. I do think that how he handled January 6th was horrible. But yeah, I'm certainly not saying he's the worst president ever. And Valor, yes, both sides have lunatics. That's my point. I am not suggesting that the Republicans are dirty and the Democrats are clean. Believe me. I'm not trying to defend Black Lives Matter and Antifa. I'm simply trying to point out that neither side has anything worth defending. And we need to stop trying to point the finger at those guys and saying those guys are bad, but these guys are good. That's not how it works. Both sides are dirty. Both sides are filthy. And we need to clean up both sides. And if we're not willing to do that, then we need to shut up. And we're not willing to do that, then it's over. The Republican Party has been pretty ineffectual in the whole for the many years. Needs a good shakeup. Well, it definitely did not get a good shakeup these last 4 years. I think that both political parties have been pretty ineffectual, but that's intentional. The Democrats and the Republicans in the United States, this is the secret of American politics, Aberjam. The Democrats and the Republicans want things to stay the same. So what they do is they argue very effectively about how the other side is so horrible, but they never actually change anything. That way, they can keep fighting over it. Yay! Lance, I wasn't saying you specifically are backing China. I'm talking about Miley, who has openly supported the matter by Biden and the vocal left. Doesn't matter. I'm just saying that wasn't what I was talking about, Lancer, and I don't know enough about Miley to talk about it. So I'm not talking about it because I don't know the details, right? All I'm saying is that if what people have been saying about him is that's true, he should be brought up on charges, period. But I do not know. I don't know exactly what he said. I don't know what he said to his Chinese contemporaries. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is that if a general actually did say that they would act independently of the commander-in-chief, that's a dereliction of duty at the very least. So I think that there's a problem there, and they should probably be brought up on charges. So kind of like how you were being attacked by fans from Doomcock and Geeks and Gamers, etc., is their responsibility to tell them to stop. After all, Doomcock does stay angry. Well, that was kind of the thinly veiled analogy that I was creating, yes. And so when I was getting all the death threats and stuff from certain members of the Phantom Menace, and, they should have put an end to it, but they didn't. Because what they would do is say, I didn't tell anybody to do that. I certainly would never say that. Now, don't get me wrong, and I will say this. I've never, ever heard Doomcock say a negative word about me. All right? I have heard, or Geeks and Gamers, all right? There's the big boys of the Phantom Menace. There's only one of them that I've ever heard actually say anything bad about me. However, that person has also said good things about me. So I'm a little confused, but, and that's Gary, Nerdrotic. But which is really confusing to me. I don't know how he feels about me at this point. I've heard him say really bad things about me. I've heard him say some nice things about me. I genuinely don't know how he feels about me, but I'm sure he doesn't watch my channel anymore, so whatever. He doesn't have time for small potatoes like me. He's too busy spreading the hate on Alex Kurtzman or whatever. And, but that's just the way that the big channels behave, right? Is that, yeah, Doomcock can stay angry and that kind of thing. It sells a lot of clicks. But you know what? When people in the Phantom Menace are out there saying some of the most vile things on Twitter and stuff like that, and people are just, these big boys in the Phantom Menace are just cheering them on, I don't like it. I really don't like it. And while, there may not be a legal, connection or anything like that, I'm not saying that there is, but boy, there sure is a moral one. I'm surprised Nerdrotic's channel still up after having Alex Jones on. Alex Jones may have been deplatformed, but that doesn't mean you can't have him as a guest. I'm not surprised because I think they were purposely challenging Google, because I watched about an hour of that broadcast. I watched as much as I could stomach, but quite frankly, it was, the hate was strong, and I was tired of it. It's funny because watching that much pure, unadulterated hatred just made me feel sick to my stomach. And after watching it for a while, and I couldn't take it. They recorded themselves inside the building attacking. It's not crap. The feds let them go. You can see that on Sullivan's arrest record. Lancer, I'm not, whatever. I'm not trying to argue about the details of what happened. I'm simply saying Trump could have done more, and he didn't. That's on Trump. All right. You want to argue case by case about what every single person did and what their arrest record was? You have fun with that. You go ahead and listen to your Alex Jones podcast and have fun. Alex says, Trump prevented people from going to yesterday's D.C. rally. Well, I don't know anything about that either, because I don't follow Trump. Lord Ebb says, what's your stand on the Second Amendment? Well, it's part of the Constitution of the United States. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to say. I take it a little further than most. I'm a soft L libertarian when it comes to the Second Amendment. So I'll say this. I do believe that people should be able to own any and all weapons that... Oh, and thank you, Alex.
Shaman plead guilty. He expected Trump to pardon.
Well, it happens. But, yeah. A lot of people will try to expect... it's funny. When Trump was going out, a lot of people were expecting a lot more pardons from him than he did. I'm kind of surprised myself. But not sure what your point there is, Alex. I mean, genuine. I don't know what your point is about Shaman. Anyway, are you trying to say that Trump is good because he didn't pardon him, or are you trying to say Shaman is... I'm confused. Anyway, so Lord M on the Second Amendment. So I take it a little further than most. My stance on the Second Amendment. People have the right to own any weapon in existence that is not nuclear, biological, or chemical. That's it. And like if you want to own an M1 Abrams tank, no problem. I don't care. Now, some people are like, what? But clearly the Second Amendment didn't have that in mind. Well, they didn't have tanks back then. However, yes, they did have that in mind in the from a philosophical sense. The idea of the Second Amendment was to make sure that the people were well armed enough so that in the event that the government became tyrannical, the people could rise up and take over. And right now, could the people rise up and take over? Nope. Because sure, people can get, AR-15s and stuff, but that ain't going to do a whole lot of good against tanks. So I do believe people have the right to purchase and own any type of weapon, including military-grade weaponry, except for nuclear, biological, and chemical, because that requires an international treaty. And, so, yeah. Robert says you should try to get on one of the critical drinkers live broadcasts. Oh, he'd never have me on. I'm way too small for his taste. Jeremy from the Quartering always says, don't contact people I talk about, leave them alone, and I don't condone such actions at the end of his videos. That's good. I don't watch the Quartering often, but I've seen him a couple of times. If he does say that, I'm glad he does, because... yeah, you should make sure you tell people, don't harass people. That is, because it is not good. Jeremy from Geese and Gamers tells a duty to have told his fan base to knock it off, but he didn't. No, he doesn't. And I agree. I think that if just like I preach at you guys, I literally preach at you guys about being loving and respectful and all that. But I think that anybody that talks about this kind of stuff needs to make sure that they talk about the importance of being respectful. Lancer says, I'm not watching Alex Jones. I watch Antifa streamers and record everything they say, including Central Committee's call to kill all irredeemables. Well, you have fun with that. I'm not watching the crazy Antifa streamers and taking all my information from them. If that's what you think that they're saying, okay. But the problem is that if you listen to an extremist and you believe them, regardless of what side they're on, you're probably listening to lies. I mean, first of all, here's the funny thing is, because I'm listening to an Antifa streamer who's saying that we did it. We're the ones behind the whole storming the Capitol building. How do you know that that's not just a person that's a Trump supporter pretending to be an Antifa supporter, trying to, come on. I mean, it's just a game. Someone that just wants clicks. How do we talk productively with Democratic support? That's a tough one, Alex. But the first thing we have to do is not be a dick. Number one. We need to, and I know that sounds simple, but it's not as simple, we need to stop trying to say things like the January 6th storming of the Capitol building was done by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. We need to stop trying to defend everything. And instead, just start talking to them. How about we start out by just saying, hey, so what do you believe? Because you know what we don't do? We don't say, hey, so what do you believe? And instead, we start just attacking. I mean, so if you're talking to a Democrat, you're probably going to immediately just assume that, like kind of like what Mr. Shredder was saying earlier. Oh, you just want to rip babies to shreds, right? So if you want to talk about abortion, if that's the topic, you say, so what's your stance on abortion? Well, I'm pro-choice. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, I believe that, a woman has the right to choose. Really? So you don't think that it's a medical procedure? Well, of course it's a medical procedure. Well, so you have a conversation instead of having a debate. Or how about this? And this is the amazing thing, I'll tell you. Honestly, and this, I'm not talking about online. I'm not talking about on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. I'm talking about in real life. Here's the most amazing thing. This works 100% of the time. You ready for this, Alex? All right. Hope you're sitting down. Hey, want to get a cup of coffee? Bam. So, did you watch Lower Decks? What'd you think? Start with that. Just because they're a Democrat doesn't mean you have to talk about politics, right? You start out, find something you can talk about. Get to know the person, not the politics, right? So you get to know the person. Let's say you find out they're a Trekkie. Hopefully, any good person should be a Trekkie. So you start talking, oh, well, hey, are you Kirk, Picard, Cisco? Oh, Burnham, really? Oh, wow. Why do you like Burnham so much? And you can talk about this stuff, right? And get into it. Get to know the person for a while before you jump into the politics. Because if you know the person, if you get to know that person, if you really get to see who that person is underneath just they're a Democrat, now you get an idea of what makes them tick. You get an idea of what motivates them and why they think the way they do. And so now when you get to the politics, when you start talking about the politics, first of all, you're talking to a friend, not just a Democrat. And it's a lot easier to have a conversation with a friend than it is to have a conversation with a Democrat. And then second of all, now you can talk to them with an understanding of, okay, so I know that you think that this and this and this, but have you considered this? Because now I know this person well enough to speak into their life and understand where they're coming from. That's how you talk to someone. All right. I gotta wrap things up, man. I've been going way I was going to wrap it up an hour ago, and we just kept going. I hate you guys for being good conversationalists. Let's see. Lancer says the only people that acted before Trump. These people have been active before Trump was a thing. Lancer, I'm not talking about these people. I am not. You know what? Anybody who wants to. If you genuinely believe there are people out there that want to kill a third of the population, look, dude, come back to Earth. This is not the X-Files, okay? Really. I'm sorry, Lancer. I love you, buddy, but this is not the freaking X-Files. They're not lizard people. They're not trying to kill everybody. You know, promise. Anyway, Valor says, one could call geeks and gamers and doomcock and nerd extremists for the fans to do an insult and attack Kathleen Kennedy, JJ, etc. on Twitter constantly. How is this helping their cause? It's not. That's the problem. It hurts the cause. It absolutely hurts the cause because it breaks down, you know, it makes it so that that's why we have people in the production of these shows that write off criticism saying it's just a bunch of crazy extremists. Why? Because it's a bunch of crazy extremists. Because we're proving to them that they're right. Because every time we start saying that crazy stuff, they're like, yeah, see? You see? They are crazy. Lancer says, have a nice weekend. Thank you. Oh, and my lovely wife is in the chat. Says, great talk. Hey, babe. Average Ab says, I thought you were in the kitchen. I could swear I heard you. Man, I can smell the bacon cooking. That's just driving me crazy now. Average Ab says, President Madison gave explicit clarification the merchant vessels could own cannons, so I'm with you on the Abrams tank. There you go. And the honestly, it's the reason that people in that produce Star Trek think that the fans are crazy, unstable, right-wing nuts is because that's what we present to them. That's, you know, if every time, and this is the stupid thing, if every single time they throw a woman on screen, we scream woke, 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 guess what? They're going to think we hate women. Surprise! And you know, and that's the problem. Yeah, it's. I'm gonna. Oh man, I can't wait until we get the move and all that settled because there's so many things I want to talk about and do videos about. And one of them is the very idea that we talk about politics as if that's what's ruining movies and stuff. Like that's something new. I tell you, I'm gonna do a PhD level thesis on this because wokeness in movies has been around since movies have existed. If you want to complain about the agenda in movies, then you should just stop watching movies. They've always had the agenda. It's not the agenda. If you really believe it's the agenda, why would you watch The Terminator? It's woke. The Terminator is a woke movie by modern standards. All the men in The Terminator are either incompetent or die. Or as a robot. And in fact, in Terminator 2, we find out that the only way to be a good dad is to be a freaking robot. Suck on that. It's all agenda. And people say Terminator 2 is the best movie ever. Yep. And the only way to be a good dad is to be a robot. Oh, but the agenda is the problem. It's always been there. Freaking idiots. Sorry. I'm starting to sound like Alex Jones. Hey, everybody, it's Alex Jones here. You're all a bunch of idiots. No, sorry. Alex says, I was agreeing with you. As mentally unstable people like Shaman thought Trump wanted them to break in. Trump's fault needed better control. Okay, gotcha. Well, I didn't know the details of Shaman, so that's why I wasn't sure what you meant. But yeah, Trump should have done more. But that's a whole other thing. Mixing ammonia and bleach together could be considered a chemical weapon. So don't mix ammonia. You know what? If you mix ammonia and bleach together and use it as a weapon against somebody, that's, you know, kind of a problem. You know, you shouldn't be doing. But, you know, I'm not, you can't, you know, mix, if you're mixing ammonia and bleach together as a bomb and you're selling it, that would be illegal. So, yeah. Average Jam says Terminator 2 is not the best movie ever. That award goes to Barbie's Island Dreamhouse. The stream is going so well.